A belter of a show this evening, and hot on the heels of a second consecutive 3 points, courtesy of more heroics from Town's comeback kids. Another truly pulsating celebration moment for the ages. Here's looking at you, Joe Tomlinson. Several debatable comms moments from our football club and more new faces settling into life in the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge. We're buzzing to be back. Well, tonight I've got a banner panel for you joining us. I have got Joe. How are we, Joe?
Good evening, Hannes. Yeah, not bad, thank you.
Good evening, buddy. Great to hear your voice. We've got Chris. Hot through the front door, Chris, is fair to say.
Literally, Mark, I've literally just come back in about 5 minutes ago and absolutely delighted to be here.
You're still steaming as you've landed. We've also got Adam. How are we, Adam?
Good afternoon. Not too bad. How are you?
Yeah, very well. Thank you, buddy. Very, very well indeed. And certainly not least, we've got the first of tonight's special guest. We've got the delightful Kitman Hoops. Steve Hooper, how are we,
Hello,
mate?
mate. Not too bad. I'm just watching Southampton Grimsby. This is a banter game, this.
I'm watching it as well.
Is it? Have they hit a third yet, or is it still 2-0?
It's 2-1, and Southampton had just had one ruled out for offside. VAR, so it's still 2-1. But it would have been 2-2.
The comeback is on. The comeback
well,
is on.
they got 7.5 minutes, so they better get on with it.
Never you mind that. Never you mind that. I could just. You're turning into a man of the media. Steve Hooper is the best way to put it. So, I mean, listen, you're not your average Kitman Hoops, are you now? So we'll start by just having a little tickle around those areas. You've got the quite incredible presence on both TikTok and Twitter. Do you want to talk us through it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've been doing the TikTok for a while, a couple of years. Went a bit crazy, and we just figured, what's the next step, really, for the life of the Kitman stuff. And we figured that the podcast that hopefully most of you guys have seen or heard, or we put it everywhere. Hopefully that's the next step, really.
Well, all right. Look, take us back a step then. So obviously you're there. You've got your Kitman roles. You and Jonah back in the day. This is pre anything you guys decided to do on social media. What was the inspiration for branching out into the socials?
We used to get asked a lot, like, what is the job? Like, what do you do? I mean, when we started the job, we didn't really know what it was. Let's be honest, we were asked to help out for a week, and then we found out what it was, and then we were offered the job, and, it just kind of went from there. But, yeah, a lot of people wouldn't know necessarily what a Kitman is, or what a Kitman does, or how prominent it is within the club. So we just figured we'd kind of put some bits and pieces on a TikTok. I'll tell you what happened. In lockdown, I saw Kane Woolery did a TikTok, and he had edited himself doing all sorts of different poses whilst doing like press-ups, and I thought it was hilarious. So I said to Jonah, I said, what is this TikTok stuff? And he's like, oh yeah, it's that thing where people do little videos and that. I was like, well, how about we get on it and just show people what we do rather than having to answer the same questions all the time, and just stick it out there and let people see what the job is. So, and then people ask more specific questions rather than just, what does a Kitman do?
Well, so I'm going to ask you that specific question, Steve. So, because obviously, prior to you and I becoming friends, I used to sit up in the town end and watch you and Jonah milling about on the pitch. You were slinging the cones out, you're getting the balls in, you're getting the balls out. You were essentially you were getting everything set for the players and the coaches. But that was my kind of view on what you guys did, and I was like, who are these two curious guys? And then I was invited along by Rich Pullen to take part in the Low Stranger Shield, and that was the first time I met you guys in person. And then my kind of eyes started opening, and I started understanding just what an important role you play within the club as well. When I started having conversations at the Low Stranger Shield with people like Sam Parkin, it's hard not to name drop that day because obviously it was a real kind of smorgasbord of Swindon Town legends. And the minute Sam started talking about what the role of the Kitman is behind the scenes, and the fabled role of Hoops and Jonah behind the scenes, you see all the other kind of legends' eyes lighting up as well, and so you start sort of sniffing around and taking more notice. And then obviously you invited us to come and do our last season's end of season awards, and you get an opportunity to walk into the kit room, and then the penny drops because there's a sofa and lots of kits. And then that's kind of representative of the spirit that you've managed to create inside the club, Steve. So, but for those of you that were maybe, those of our listeners that take it back, Steve, to what I was saying about observing you boys from afar, from my role, my last row in the town end, looking down on the pitch. Tell everybody what you literally do.
What, day to day?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, all right. So training day, we'll get in about 6, half 6. We'll make sure all the kit's ready and packed in the metal tins, and we'll load the van. We'll drive over to the training ground. When we get there, we'll set everything up for the players. So they'll have their kit on the bench, and then underneath you'll have the sliders, the trainers, the boots, any other bits and pieces they have for a training day. We'll set everything up like that. Their GPS vest, which is like the little like locator that says how far they've run, that kind of thing. They wear that for every training session, so we set that up. We'll obviously take all the coaches' gear. Then when that's all set up, we'll take everything out to the pitch. So your mannequins, your cones, your flat dish, your balls, your bibs, everything out, set it up, ready, so that when the coaches come out, they've got everything they need to set up the session and start with the day. The players will then be having breakfast while we're doing that. Then when they go out to training, we'll have a little tidy up. We'll pick some pieces up. Any kit that isn't being used, we'll pack all that away, so that after training, it's a lot quicker to get away from Beversbrook, because obviously, with the time constraints, you need to be out of there as quick as possible. So when training starts, we'll go out to training. We'll be basically wherever the coaches need us. So if they need balls, rotated back into sessions, if there's finishing and and they're missing or whatever's going on, we'll be feeding those balls back into the session. Once an activity's done, we'll be picking up all the equipment, making sure that that's all ready and put away and neat and tidy and clean. When training finishes, we'll pack everything away, put it all away, come inside, sort everything. So from their clothes that they've worn into the right tins, their boots, their sliders, their trainers, everything. Load it all back up, drive it back to the stadium where they'll be doing a gym session. And then we'll start with the washing of the stuff that they wore for training. And then whilst that's going on, lads will be finishing in the gym. They'll be having their lunch. They'll be getting out of their kit that they've worn in the afternoon, and we'll start the washing process with that. So it's a non-stop day, to be honest. And then once all that's done, we'll fold it all away into their little pigeonholes, and then we'll start again the next day with rolling it in the towel and going all again. So yeah, it's a pretty full-on day. It probably lasts about 11 hours most days.
So
Do you have any specific requirements or like nuances from certain players that add a little bit more to those 11 hours?
Oh, lots of stuff. We have to know every player's trainers, every player's sliders, every player's boots. You might get crazy things like, especially in like a pre-season or in a January, where players are coming in, players are going out. They need things removed from flats. They need different things moved from one accommodation to another. So we'll jump in the van. We'll go to wherever we got to go, pick the stuff up, move it, and then come back and carry on with the job. There's players. What have we done before? Given play. Here's one for you. Granty got his international call up. He was in London. He had to get on a plane in 4 hours, and his boots were in Swindon. So I trolleyed on up to Swindon, got his boots, jumped in the van, drove to Gatwick, dropped off his boots, come back 2 weeks later, had a parking ticket. That was brilliant. That was about 180 quid for parking in the drop-off for less than 2 minutes.
I hope that was billed to the Jamaican FA.
Oh, yeah. Of course.
Who's the biggest liability, Steve, when it comes to is there someone that's really hard wearing on the kit?
Not really. They're all pretty good this year, to be honest. I mean, obviously we had Kurds last year, didn't we? So that was a delight every single day.
Can you elaborate, Hoops? Can you elaborate?
Oh, he'd come in, he'd be like, I haven't got my stuff to travel in. And I'd be like, well, we're travelling in 3 hours, mate. And he's like, yeah, I left it in London somewhere. So we'd have to get him
It's
another
behind a bed
polo
in
shirt,
Chelsea.
another pair of joggers, another, zip top and gilet and whatever. Yeah, and
Is
that
that a
had
case of
happened
just
on a
raiding the
regular
club shop at
basis.
that point?
Sorry?
Is that a case of just raiding the club shop at that point?
Yeah, pretty much. You get to that point where you kind of have no choice.
So, Steve, the gear that the fans wear and the gear that the players wear, is it for some clubs? Obviously, they have player issue, which is very different to what's sold in the club shop. What's the situation at Swindon?
It's the same stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the same stuff. We do it all, like, obviously I order what we need, retail order what they need, academy order what they need, and then it all comes in together from the same place. So, yeah, it's the same shirts. We don't have, like, a professional level shirt and a retail level shirt. It's the same kit. So which is helpful, because then if we ever need anything, we can grab it from the shop, and if we ever have any left over at the end of the season, then they can put them in the shop and sell them. So it works both ways, for the club financially and for us in terms of ease of use and getting equipment and kit and stuff.
It is weird, though, isn't it? Because I think we've had quite a few instances over the years where certain kits have been, like Hannah says, like the authentic, player version of top tier teams would wear. Like I think the Puma dry cell is like what the Borussia Dortmunds of this world would wear. I'm pretty sure that the Derby Rimmer shirt, the purple one, was dry cell, wasn't it? Like,
I think so. Yeah, that was a bit of a weird one, to be honest. So we didn't have a third kit that year. That wasn't in the plan.
Yeah.
So then the kits come in, and at that stage, we weren't in the conversation of what the kits are, what's coming in. And obviously, that grey kit that we had that year was so light, and it had red trim. So when we were playing like an Exeter or a Stevenage, who were red and white then, you're thinking, well, what are we going to wear? Because a light grey and red and a full red, we can't really get away with either. So I literally was like, we need a third kit. And then they spoke to Puma, and it was just off the shelf, that kit. And they
really?
bought, initially, they bought about 40 of them, and we printed them all up. And then, because they seemed so popular, and because of the sponsorship side of it and the whole charity piece, they then sold the 1,000, to obviously raise the money for the charity, which was a really good thing. But initially, it wasn't even a conversation. It was only purely because me and Jonah had the conversation. What are we going to do when we go to Exeter? Or anybody else that's in red and white? Because that grey kit was so close to white that, we kind of saw it as a bit of an issue.
It is an issue with the kit clashes, isn't it? I mean, I saw a bit of the Stoke-Brighton game yesterday, and genuinely, my eyes found it hard to differentiate the two different teams. And I mean, Brighton's away kit's like a sort of a light blue grey sort of colour, and obviously Stoke are red and white stripes, a lot like Exeter. So, I hadn't thought about it before, but I can see that it probably would be quite tough on the eyes watching that game, especially on TV.
Yeah, and there's games where you'll think, why are you wearing, for example, why were we wearing green? I don't know, wherever it was. Team in blue, who was that? Colchester, I think.
Yeah.
I think it was Colchester. And I think they have white shorts. But our home kit's got white shorts.
Do you get told by the EFL to choose a certain kit?
We have the handbook and we can see what their kits are. So we make our choices based on that. We submit it to the EFL, and then they come back to us with either yes or no, or change this element or whatever. I think at Crawley, obviously we wore white shorts, didn't we, with the green top?
Yeah.
And that was because the EFL had decided that we couldn't wear green shorts for whatever reason. I don't really know. There was no real explanation with that. It was just, we don't want you to wear green shorts, so we wore the white ones, because at the time, the white kit wasn't in favour. Let's put it that way.
We've won it now, so it's all right.
I think, though, actually,
exactly.
with our games this season, was Doncaster the first one when we really had to wear the third shirt, because obviously the red and the white wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it was Doncaster was the one where, that was the first one where if we didn't have the third kit, we'd have been in a bit of trouble.
Well, Steve, going back to sort of like your point where you've joined the club and you've commenced your kitman duties, and then coming right the way forward to this season. Who from a managerial point of view, who's been your biggest advocate, do you feel, in terms of helping you sort of carve your niche, but also managing upwards, making sure that people in the club realise what an important role you're playing behind the scenes?
Oh, that's a tough question. I don't know. Owen Doyle was always great. He was always great with us, and he'd always make sure that people were being respectful and that people were appreciating the work that was done. I mean, at Christmas, he come to me in January, called us out into the dugout, and he gave us a bit of cash each just to say thank you for, all the work and this and the other. And then when players start doing that, other players see it and other people see it. But also Richie Wellens. Obviously, we're playing them at the weekend, but he was massive for us. I think he went on the radio, he was doing like a fans phone in or something, and he said, how important we were to the group and this, that, and the other. So that was one. Yeah, I think it was probably Richie, to be honest.
And
was the one that kind of did it.
You mentioned Macca, obviously, after he departed, but it was quite an emotional departure, wasn't it, when he left? Like, he was another one where you could see there was a really good bond with you two guys.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, when Kurtz came in on trial, right at the start, so we had no players. Mildy's calling around going, is there anyone that can come and fulfill these fixtures for us? We had nothing. We hadn't been paid, and there was no manager, and there was nothing. So, we had a few. And then that day at Supermarine, where obviously Granty came back, and then Harry played, and he did really well. And you could see that there was something in there. And if you looked after him and if you created a good relationship with him, you could really get something good out of him. And we saw that straight away. And I think before they decided to sign him, Ben Garner actually came to me and Jonah, and he was like, how is he with you guys? How is he around the place? And we were like, you got to sign him. You can't, he'll be brilliant around the place as long as we look after him, we make him feel valued and all the rest of it. And I think he knew that. He knew that we had said that. And I think that kind of helped create that relationship. And, we'd look after him if he needed stuff around his place, if he, needed picking up from somewhere or taking somewhere, we'd just chuck him in the car or in the van and we'd take him to wherever he needed to be, So
what was he like as a trialist, Hoops? Was he like, I mean, when trialists come in, do they expect to be catered to by the kitmen? Do they have their own boots and bring them in, just come in?
Not really. I mean, it's different for individuals, but most of them will come in with their own stuff and then take it away and then bring it back because they don't know whether they're going to be invited back. They don't know whether, how long they're going to be there. Sometimes it's just the one session. Other times it can be 3 or 4 weeks. Lloyd Isgrove was in for 3 weeks before a decision was made on him. So, he would leave his stuff with us because he knew he was coming back the next day. But, it's all very much down to the individual, to be honest.
So, Steve, I won't get you to kind of mention names for the next question because obviously it'd be a little bit close to the bone. But you've got scenario. Obviously, all players are different, and they've all got sort of different sort of barometers in terms of the abuse that they can handle and how it affects them psychologically. I mean, I heard a really interesting interview today with Sam Parkin on the BBC podcast where he was talking about if he knew when he was a young 19, 20-year-old pro what he knows now, it'd be a totally different player when he was a youngster, and his tolerance for dealing with abuse. But tell us talk a little bit around the kind of the role that you and Jonah play in terms of almost like the welfare support role with the players and sort of providing them with that hub or that sort of. I mean, I mentioned about coming in the kit room is what I'm trying to say. I walked in the kit room and it was literally like walking on the set of Soccer AM, and immediately you've created a place where as soon as you walk in, it's the colours, it's a feeling of safety because it's right in the heart of the stadium, isn't it? Behind many doors and many different layers of concrete. But you've created this kind of little sort, almost like a safety bubble. I mean, I walked in and I felt it. So that must be incredibly valuable for professional footballers that maybe they come off the pitch after an absolute howler of a performance, for example, like Doncaster, or I can mention any previous guy. I can mention the COVID season wouldn't have been so bad without fans in the stadium. But you get where I'm coming from, Steve. Like,
Yeah, of
what's
course.
talk to me a little bit more about the kind of welfare role that you guys play, for want of a
Well,
better.
they've got their own players' lounge now with pool table and table tennis and TVs and all sorts of stuff now. But the kit room is still used. So when people want to come and sit quietly or have a chat, the door's always open, and everyone knows that. Like, the second we're in the building, the door's open. It's unlocked. It's wide open. We don't just unlock it and leave it shut. It's wide open, and any of the lads can come in at any time and talk to us. I mean, it's just someone else to talk to, isn't it? It's just someone that, for example, if they want to just have a soundboard or run something by us, and they know it's not going to go any further, so they just come to us and have a chat. But to be honest, it's just like we're kind of a go-between. We're kind of in between, like, your manager, your coaches, that kind of area, your analysts, your sports scientists, and then you've got your players. But then we're like between the two, where we're with the players a lot of the time. But obviously we're staff, so we're kind of in a bit of a unique position where they can talk to us. And obviously, if it's something mad, then we'll need to go and speak to someone. But if it's just to be a sounding board, then they know that's not going to go any further.
And I guess at a club like Swindon Town, Steve, I mean, we all love our football club dearly, but there is more of a sense, for want of a better word, of all hands to all hands to the pump, all hands on deck, as opposed to you go to a Chelsea or a Liverpool, and I mean you've got a kitman's kitman, if you know what I mean. I'm sure you've got assistants for assistants for assistants, and there's less sort of scrutiny on the cost base. So it's unsurprising in many respects. Going back to the podcast, it's unsurprising that you've kind of got that license, if you will, to sort of spread your tentacles somewhat.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got the media team, and there's two of them, but like, you might go to a Chelsea and there'd be 10. So anything we can do to support that, and if we can create some content that people want to listen to and gives a little insight into the club and is a bit of fun and is like, why wouldn't we do that? Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it only benefits the club.
So tell us a little bit more then about the podcast, Steve. So you're one episode in. Tell us about your obviously. Tell us about your when can people download it? What day do you upload? What time do you upload?
So the initial idea was just to do home weekends and upload on the Friday before the home game, have guests on, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, on the first episode, if anyone's watched it or listened to it, Charlie's thrown in, what, you're not doing away days? And we've gone, well, no, we weren't. So now, following that, tomorrow, episode 2 will be out, and it will be an away day special.
Nice one, Charlie.
So
nice one, son.
So there's a little exclusive for you guys, because nobody else knows that yet. There'll be loads of detail in there. We've already recorded it, so I know what's in it. Yeah, there's loads of detail in there. We talk about like our relationships with people at Orient. We talk about like previous games there from our point of view. We also reveal who's going to be our next guest on the Friday home game, which will be on the 10th of March. That will be released just before Carlisle, but I won't tell you that, so you need to listen tomorrow to find out who that is. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, and we just have a bit of chit chat. It's just me and Jonah on that one. There's no guest as such, but no, it's quite good. I mean, we've listened back through, and it's all right, to be fair. That will be out tomorrow. I'm still waiting on the guy that does me editing to get back to me, and as soon as he does, we'll get it edited, and hopefully it'll be out in the morning. If it's not out in the morning, it'll be out before you drive home tomorrow evening.
All right, mate. Well, listen, I mean, everybody needs to keep their eyes open. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed the podcast. It treads the episode 1 was a brilliant balance between authenticity, a little bit of spit and sawdust feel, but crucially, it didn't feel in any way, shape, or form contrived. Knowing you as I do, Steve, that was as genuine an experience as I would have if I was sat with you in the stand. So well done, mate, because I think that's absolutely key. But I've got I've got a couple of questions just before we finish off. Harrogate on Saturday, mate. Brilliant win. Rashawn Hepburn-Murphy, Joe Tomlinson's returns. You got any insights for us from a Kitman's point of view? Anything you can share without betraying any confidences? Because they've returned in style, haven't they? Both the boys, obviously Rush from suspension and JT from injury and from signing on loan from Peterborough with a view to a permanent move. So it was quite the day for the boys on Saturday, wasn't it?
Well, Joe was telling me all week how he was going to come on and score. And he was saying, when I score, I'm going to have to take my shirt off, but I don't want to get a yellow card because he wants to show off all the work he's been doing in the gym. But he doesn't want to get booked, so he didn't do it.
I must admit, that number 7 shirt, to be fair, he filled it out, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he's been working hard, the boy, since we saw him, sort of 6 months ago. Yeah, he's been working hard in that gym. But
So what was the vibe like on Monday, Steve? Obviously, I'm sure JT and Rush in the changing room and around you guys in the kit room were absolutely buzzing on Saturday afternoon. And what was it like coming back to training on Monday?
Yeah, it's good. Like it is what it is. I think sometimes you can get carried away with a win or two, and I don't feel like that's the case at the moment. I feel like everyone's firmly got their feet on the ground, and we won. Right, you move on to the next game. You go and win that one. And then you get to the points tally you need to get to where you want to be. So I think that's the mentality now, which is good. It's where it needs to be for me. Like, that's how, from our experience, that's how you're successful.
Has the new gaffer come in and instilled a different mindset at all from what you've seen?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, sessions have been hard work for the lads, but it's good because they're now conditioned to what he wants and what he needs, and they understand what he's looking for, which is great, and they enjoy the sessions, which makes it even better because it means they work even harder. So yeah, like from that point of view, a mentality bit of if we work hard, we'll enjoy it, and if we enjoy it, we'll work harder and we'll get better and we'll improve. I think, yeah, definitely that's something he's brought with him.
Did when he came in, did sort of Jody or the lesser seen Ed come and sit down with you and Jonah and have a chat about what he wanted from you guys as kitmen?
Yeah, I mean, he came in the kit room. We were stood in there for a while having a chat. The next day, actually, he sent me a text message. So I just, as I do, responded with, this is what you can expect from us. This is the level. This is the standards. Anything you need, just let us know. And he was really appreciative of that. So I think that kind of started well. Yeah, and it's been really good, to be fair. Like, we really enjoy working with him. Got a good relationship with him already. So he appreciates the amount of work we have to do, obviously, with the training ground being where it is. So yeah, no, it's been really, really good.
Steve, a final question from me, which is a little bit.
Hang on a minute. I see Jonah Isaacs is listening.
And so bear with me because
what's going on?
He for sure, Jonah. He
was off rehearsing for Reading Festival. I thought like he's gone. Where's he gone?
Well, for sure, Jonah, you'll be coming on and singing. Make absolutely no mistake. But we've only got 2 minutes left of this. Oh, look, he's disappeared.
He's absolutely bottled that, hasn't he?
He's absolutely choked on that.
Oh, come on, man.
But listen, Steve, a little tip of me hat to your TikTok presence. Probably the most important question that I'm going to be asking you tonight is there more grass or hair on planet Earth?
Oh my God. It's gotta be hair, hasn't it?
No, it's grass. It's got to be grass.
How can it be grass?
Listen,
Tyrese on Charlie Austin's arms, and there is grass in the world.
Tyrese Shade nailed it. Think of the agriculture. You guys need to know your agriculture.
But you've got like 5 million hair follicles on a human body,
and there are 8 billion of us on the planet.
And you're not including the animals. You're not including any of that stuff.
Oh, I always thought it was just human hair on top of your head.
Hair. You've got hair all over your body, everywhere.
It could be hair then. It could be hair.
It could be hair.
Not for Hannah's anyway.
Oh, now listen. All right, okay. I left the door wide open for that one. I can't think of a better way to finish. Hoops, it's been an absolute treat, mate, having you on. And I know
Always
that
is.
and Jonah kind of like squeezing on and paying a little bit of attention to the show tonight. Mate, best of luck for the weekend. Best of luck with obviously the latest episode of the podcast. And as you say, if there's anyone that hasn't downloaded, available on all good platforms. Am I
And
right?
YouTube, get on YouTube because the video is even better than the audio. Yeah, it was brilliant to film. It was great fun. The one tomorrow, get that in your ears. If you haven't subscribed on your podcast platform, get and subscribe, and then you'll have the notification every week when it comes out. Yeah, do it.
All right, super stuff. Thanks for joining us, Steve.
Not a
Looking forward to
problem,
seeing
mate.
you again very soon, buddy.
Yeah, see you soon, mate.
Take care, pal.
Cheers,
Bye.
Hoops.
Well, there you are, ladies and gents. The wonderful one half of our Kitman double act, albeit the other one jumped in and listened for a little bit. But it's not all been fun and games in the kit room, because Swindon Town Football Club yesterday released a detailed overview of their financial accounts for the 2021-22 financial year. The document that they released provided a breakdown of figures relating to areas such as operating costs, sales, administrative expenses and profits. And it covers the period June 2021 to May 2022. Now, the interesting thing about this is, in my sort of best part of 40-year sort of tenure of following the club, we've never released our accounts. And as a former company director that I am, one of the things I used to hate doing was pouring through my accounts. And I tended to find the more I mixed with directors, the more I heard the wonderful question that I'm about to ask Rob Angus and Greg Norman. But first of all, we'll bring them both on board. How are we, Rob? How are we, Greg?
Good, thanks, Angus.
Hi there. I'm good, thank you.
Hello, Greg. Congratulations on your Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge debut, buddy. Your hoodie is in the post.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So, Rob, Greg, I mentioned from one former company director to two current company directors. Can you please walk us through the latest accounts and explain them as though we're a kindergarten class?
Do you want me to start, Greg, and then you can correct me, mate?
I'll chime in. Yeah, that's
sure.
fine, Robin.
Yeah.
I can chime in. That's fine.
So, as you said, Hannah's and everyone, this covers a period from June 21 to May 22, so about 10 months of Clem's ownership. Obviously, as well, in that year, obviously we got the return of fans after COVID and stuff like that. So you've got a position where during the year it will show our financial performance, so how we performed in the year. That you can see that from the profit and loss account, and we've made a small profit for the year, which is really good. And the balance sheet shows the financial position, where it shows that our debts are coming down, but the majority of the debts are now owned to Clem. And those are loans owed to him or his companies, and they're loans without any fixed repayment date, because they're obviously due to him, and he's quite relaxed about when he gets his money back, and there's no interest due on them. So these accounts, show an improving position. They are boosted by the fact that we obviously had the Man City game, which increased our turnover significantly, which obviously we haven't had this year, unfortunately. But they do show an improving position. Still lots to do as we rebuild the finances of the club, but they're a good step in the right direction. And we have to remember as well, this is for the period ending May 22. So, we're 9 months now into the new financial year, and obviously hoping for a strong end of the season.
Rob, do you understand? I mean, clearly you can't. I've seen a lot of the sort of comment, damned if you do, damned if you don't, at the moment on socials in relation to what Swindon Town sort of put out through comms. Do you kind of understand why sort of maybe the untrained eye, or indeed the trained eye, maybe looked at the release of these accounts and went for the club's jugular? Like, do you understand why there might be some cynicism out there?
Well, I mean, we've always said, obviously, this is, as you said, the first time we've sort of released, if you like, full accounts. So I think that's a positive. That's being open and transparent. Something Clem committed to do when he took over. And I think, for me, I could understand cynicism to a degree, and questions is great, but it does show an improving picture. And as I said, the fact is Clem's put a lot of money in. It illustrates that, which you have to do, and I think this is a positive thing. But people need to understand that money's put in. He's not calling it back anytime soon, and there's no interest charged on it. So I think if you understand them, you understand it is an improving picture, but there's still lots for us to do.
Yeah, Greg, I've got we've had a couple of questions through from listeners, and just because obviously Rob's been brilliant at breaking the ice for us, and I'm quite keen for you to earn your show hoodie. The first question, Greg's from James Bray, and James says, and you've partially answered it, Rob, which is good stuff in relation to sort of other borrowings and whatnot. But the question says, what is the 5 million debt in other borrowings? Are they loans from the owner? They are not listed as debentures.
Yes, so basically they are loans owed now to Clem Morfini. So as Rob said, they've been obviously Clem has taken the debentures on and paid the debentures off, but they will sit on the balance sheet. But they're sat on there with no interest charges and no repayment date on there either. So obviously it's money owed back to Clem at some point, but there's no pressure on the company or the business to repay the loan.
And this would be an open question for either of you, whoever really wants to answer. This is from Luke, and it says, £2.4 million of administrative expenses seems a lot. Can you shine any light on that sum?
Do you want to take that, Greg? Or?
Yeah, so that one there is for that's wages basically, that's salaries, but that includes player costs as well.
Right. We've got one directly for you here, Greg. It says, can we clarify how current debt is director loans, and what is the interest rate on those? I think that you've already sort of answered that, Rob, but again, Greg, that's directed at you. So it's just it says about current debt, sort of long-term debt, and director loans. What is the interest rate on those?
So there is no interest. So Clem, everything that is owed, we've got one owner, one director, which is Clem Morfini, and all loans are owed to him, and he's not charging any interest at all. And there's no repayment date set on any of those loans. So compared to how we were last year, we're in a much stronger position now because Clem has cleared all of that, and it's now just owed to one person, which is Clem.
And that is, obviously the owner. It sort of goes back to my previous question, gents, really, which is, I mean, I've been in Clem's presence on a number of occasions, had sort of quality conversations with people. I like to think, I mean, I had a 20-year tenure in business, and I had 6 years as a police officer. So I like to think that I'm pretty good at sniffing out the BS when I smell it. I can only say about Clem that as a personality, Rob, you and I have had this conversation on the show as well, that I've looked Clem in the eye, shook his hand, asked him about his vision for the club, asked him about his intentions for the club. And I can honestly say, I got a sense from Clem that I didn't necessarily get from people that have come before Clem that have been in the position of stewardship, where this really is somebody that kind of wants to put his heart and soul into this club and move it forward. And I think you obviously work very closely with Clem. Clem sort of like expressed his frustrations to me that sometimes people they just don't seem to be able to see past this sort of sense of too good to be true. Do you think it's fair to say that's where some of the cynicism maybe comes from? I guess, Rob, you as a long-standing Swindon Town fan, Greg, obviously yourself as well. I mean, it feels to me that that's where some of this cynicism comes from. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I think as Swindon Town fans, given what we've been through over the years, and not a great history of ownership really, we're always going to be cynical and and that cynicism sort of come through. But I do think, as you've said, Hannah's, Clem is the real deal. I wouldn't have, left a secure and good job at Nationwide to come to Swindon Town if that wasn't the case, and if I didn't believe in Clem. And I first met Clem probably back in 2017 and engaged with him for a number of years when I was a member of the Supporters Trust. So I think he is a real deal. I think he's a great bloke. He's only got positive things about Swindon Town. He's pouring a lot of money in, and he's not taking any money out. And hopefully under his stewardship and with the purchase of the ground coming up, we've got an opportunity working closely with the supporters to develop the ground, take our football club forward in the way that some of our local rivals have done, both going west down the M4 and east down the M4, and, you know, catch them up and overtake them.
Mm. Greg, and for people that have never met you before or come across you before, our paths have only crossed very, very briefly. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your background, Greg?
Yeah, so I'm also a lifelong Swindon Town supporter. I've been supporting the club since I was 7. First game back in
glutton for punishment.
Poor bloke.
back in 1979 was my first game against Bury when we won 8-1. So yeah, I've supported the club through thick and thin. Obviously, as Rob said, we've seen some owners come and go. When Clem took over the football club back in July 21, I made it sort of my ambition at that time. I decided that I was at a crossroads in my own career and that I wanted to go and work for the football club. One thing led to another. I managed to get an interview with Rob and an hour on a Teams call with Clem in a COVID hotel in Australia, and it really went on from there. But my background before joining Swindon, I've worked in construction for many years, and I was an accountant in construction, but I've worked in commercial and I've run a few of my own businesses as well. So, but the only thing I can really say is, you know, echoing what Rob said, that Clem is the real deal. And, you know, I gave up a very good career that I had at the time, but I did it because I find Clem to be a very inspirational businessman, 100% honest, very driven, and he expects an awful lot out of everybody in the business. And I'm sure Rob would vouch. He's on the phone first thing in the morning. When he's in Australia, he's phoning you at 11 and 12 o'clock at night. So he's very, very driven. He's got huge ambition for Swindon Town. And every penny we make, which, you know, we're doing a lot better as our accounts have shown, every penny that the club makes, he doesn't take a penny out. And that includes, you know, when he's in the UK, he doesn't put any expenses through or anything. So, you know, I can vouch he is, you know, he's the real deal, very driven. And I think as a football club, we're very lucky to have him as the owner and chairman.
So, Greg, you mentioned that you've been interviewed by Rob. How does your, again, for people looking from outside the club in, how does your role and Rob's role sort of differ? Where's the lines of demarcation?
Yeah, so I obviously look after the finance side of the business mainly. Rob's also a qualified accountant, so completely understands numbers, which is really helpful to me as well. I think, if I'm right in saying now, Rob, on the business side, we pretty much run that between the pair of us. I'm concentrating more on the numbers, if you like, but I'm also involved in the retail side of the business as well, and sort of general management. So nothing to do with the football side, but all on the business.
So what would, I appreciate this is a very, very difficult conversation to have, but because it's hard to sort of predict and project, and obviously we're coming out of some of the most tumultuous circumstances that, you know, the world's seen with certainly in my lifetime with the COVID lockdown and whatnot. But the current set of financials, how would you view our kind of, well, firstly, when can we expect them, and how would you sort of expect our 2023 figures to unfold? And I mean, either of you, that's open to either of you, both of you.
Sure, I'll go first, and then Greg can chime in. So look, this year, you know, we've got rising costs coming through. Obviously, everyone has inflation is rising, so that's it in both obviously light, heat, power coming through and hitting us a bit. We've not had the same cut run that we had last year, so we are down on revenue on that. And you know, the cut run and the Man City game probably boosted our revenue by £500,000-600,000, and it's a great result for Grimsby Town tonight. They'll be celebrating the fans, but also their CEO and CFO, Chief Financial Officer or Finance Director, will be also singing, because that's a massive fillip to clubs at our level, a cup run like they've had, like we did last year. So we are missing that. And obviously the playing budget's up quite a bit from last year as well. So we have got sort of cost pressures. Again, on the business side, we are performing well. I think our commercial side's performing well, our retail side. And we've had great support again with season tickets and support from all of you guys listening via match day tickets. But it's really important that we continue that, because that will drive better financial results, give more money to us to reinvest in the club, and every penny you put in does get reinvested in the club, and will help to drive us forward. And the way that it works in terms of what we call a salary caps in leagues 1 and 2 is the more revenue that we can generate, off and off the pitch, off the football and through the ticket revenue, etc., the more we're able to spend on wages, because there is like a revenue based salary cap. So I think this year again we're progressing well, but some headwinds in terms of costs. Obviously, bigger investment on the pitch, and without a cup run, it's probably a more challenging year. So the more people we get coming down to the county ground and supporting the guys, getting behind them, bigger numbers, and all that helps on the financial side, and that money will get reinvested. Greg, anything you'd add, mate?
No, I think you summed it up perfectly, Rob, to be honest. I think, the real importance coming out shortly is the season tickets that will get released in the next couple of weeks. The importance of fans obviously renewing for next season, is really important to the football club. But yeah, no, perfect, Rob, everything else.
Is it it's a tricky one, isn't it, gents? Because we've still got so much to play for this season, but it's fair to say, as someone that sort of stands behind the goal in the town end, that the general sort of vibe over the last couple of weeks, prior to obviously 2 back-to-back wins, has been a little bit kind of we've been a bit down in the dumps. We've had a poor run of form. Took a while to get the manager in through the door, and then obviously. I think the issue that fans are facing is the cost of living away from football is hitting us as hard as it's hitting you. So it's a tough one, isn't it? I mean, is there? I guess you've kind of said it, but I mean, is there anything you would add to sort of rallying call to to fans in relation to season ticket prices? Because clearly, even without the current financial issues, it's always a tricky subject for a football club to broach, isn't it? But as you say, there's some significant costs hitting the football club, and I'm sure energy costs, things like that, are going to be astronomical for you. So, I mean, the stage is yours. I mean, you've been very open and transparent, so I kind of feel it's only right and proper that we give you an opportunity to add to your rallying call.
No, thanks, Angus. I mean, look, as you say, costs are rising. Look, and what we want to do, we want to build a successful football club that is sustainable. As Greg said, season tickets are massively important for that. We have been engaging on the pricing, so it's not like we're just going to go out and put prices out. We've been engaging with the Supporters Trust and the Supporters Club on the pricing, trying to make sure it's reasonable, but also helps contribute to obviously the rising costs. They'll come out hopefully in the next couple of weeks, and if many can renew and hopefully new ones buy as well, then that'll be a massive fillip to the football club and also allow us to invest more on the pitch. The thing I would say as a rallying call is that the more the better. It makes a massive difference to us as a football club of what the quality we can invest on the pitch. Really gets behind the team, and it's massively appreciated. And every penny you put in, as Greg has said, goes into the football club. Don't go anywhere else. It goes into the football club. And that's, Greg and I have, every morning we'll wake up and go through detail through the bank account and keep an eye on it every day. And as I say, and we control the access to that bank account, the two of us, and every penny that goes in gets invested in the club.
Well, Rob, obviously one of the hot topics on the socials over the last couple of days has been the sort of role of volunteers at Swindon Town Football Club, and there's been a fair amount of kind of criticism that's come the club's way because of certain messaging that went out there about the media department, etc. But the message that I seem to be sort of collecting from you guys is there's this want to sort of drive the cost base down. What's moving forward? What is the club's attitude towards sort of volunteering, and indeed, is there opportunities as a result of that for people to get involved with the club, to try and kind of support maybe the cost coming down, but without being exploited as almost like slave labour, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There's in all the businesses I've ever worked in, there's always been people involved, whether that be work experience, volunteering, etc. But as I say, I think it's only right and proper that we give you as a club an opportunity to address some of the stuff that's come your way on the socials the last sort of 24, 48 hours.
Yeah, look, and that made a sort of position in the best way, and that's something we'll learn from. But look, what we're talking about there really is we're giving people the opportunity, the chance, if they want to get involved, they don't have to. That we have opportunities, across the Swindon Town brand. If you think about all the different academy age groups, the women's team as well, to get involved, to learn. It might be them building up their careers, showing a passion, showing an interest, to support the team that have already got there. So again, it's not the aim is to take advantage. The aim is to sort of give opportunity to people if they want to get involved, they want to gain some experience, want to show what they can do, to support, across the club. We've got, as I said, some great teams across our academy. We want to give them greater exposure, but trying to sort of spread that across, our media team's quite difficult. Equally, we've got the women's team that we want to support more. So again, we're just trying to sort of say, look, there's some people out there who have got the time and the ability to and want to do that, and they want to learn and use as a platform, then that's great. And quite often, you never know how these things sort of turn out. It could lead to an opportunity that comes up at the club and a vacancy that we've got, or someone who shows some great talent and say, do you know what, we really need to bring them on board. But it's very much about those that wish to volunteer and show a passion and interest and want to use that opportunity as a platform for them to progress. That's sort of the aim of it, rather than looking to take advantage or do things too much on the cheap. Of course, we can't afford to have a media team the same time the size as a Premier League club or a Championship club, because that would be taking money that we would need to invest on the pitch. So it is a balancing act, but it's very much about providing a platform, and those that you would like to. It's a great opportunity potentially to start or to learn of a career in media, but again, very much on their terms as much as the club's terms.
So, Rob, if let's say someone's listening into this tonight, or they know someone that they think might benefit from, or have something to kind of offer the club, which might help them then further develop to then make them perhaps more employable or give them experience for much further down the line. Let's say if they're a student coming up through the ranks, well, how are they best getting in contact with the club in relation to that?
Yeah, I mean, if they email our media team. I think there was I can't remember what email address went up the post, but you could email queries at Swindon Town FC, or I think our media email is media@swindontownfc.co.uk, and you can then express interest that way.
Rob,
I think we've had quite a lot of interest off the back of it, which is a positive. And then we're hoping it gives good positive exposure for some of the areas of the club that don't get enough exposure, such as the women's team and across the different academy age groups.
Well, look, Rob, I know that yourself and Greg have got a super early start in the morning. I appreciate, to any listeners that that have sent in questions. Here's looking at you, Keith and Aaron. So, Keith, some of the questions that you're posing have already been answered. I will make sure that any questions that come in, Rob, I obviously have a direct line into you via email. If it's okay with yourself, I will gather those up, fire them over to you, and then hopefully if you'd be able to come back to those individuals.
Yeah, that's fine.
That would be.
I know Keith's questions would be good ones, Hannah's. I know Keith Wellies, and obviously we work together at Nationwide, so I know there'll be some good questions. But no, we'll happily answer those between Greg and I.
And the same for you, Aaron. There's obviously a question there about the value of a cup run versus the value of player sales, compensation for managers, and indeed the Scott Twine money coming in as well. We'll But Rob, yeah, listen, I mean, Greg, firstly, thanks to you, buddy, for coming on. I appreciate just a short one tonight. But one of the things I'm really, really grateful on, and just to give the listeners a view on this, I contacted you guys almost as soon as I saw the story break about the accounts, sort of being published, and you were immediately accepting of coming on tonight, which I think speaks volumes for yourselves. There will always be, there's always going to be kind of people with a cynical line. You know what it's like as well. Whenever people talk about money, they say about money making people funny. I think there's always going to be an element of that, Rob and Greg as well. But I just wanted to say a personal thanks to both of you for accepting the invite without hesitation, and also for answering some of those questions. None of this stuff has been scripted. You hadn't seen any of this in advance. And Rob, that's been the case pretty much since day one. Every time you've come on the show, you just accept an invite and you come on, then you're never quite prepped. I don't know whether I should be a little bit more Paxman on you, Rob, or not. But
I'm happy for you to be if you want, mate. Go for it.
I know we like to turn the we certainly that's not necessarily our vibe, but we dear listener, we do our best to ask as many of your questions as we can to the people that matter. The more searching stuff, by all means, we'll leave that to other people to ask. But Rob, great, and like I say, Greg, thank you ever so much for coming on and making your show debut.
Yeah, no problem.
It's been
from my point of view, I just want to say that we, you know, as a football club and as a accounting department, we want to be completely transparent to the fans. Obviously, the fans are the ones that are putting the money into the football club. And I just want to assure everybody, well, as you know, Rob's a big fan, I'm a big fan, and we're just trying to do what's best for the football club. It's, you know, and I know Clem is very passionate as well, that, you know, we're all working hard to make this work. Not saying that we get everything right, but we're certainly trying our damnedest to get the, you know, the club back up on its feet as it is now, and climbing back up the leagues.
Listen, I mean, I don't want this to sound like just a big lopsided loving, but I can't help but say, again, as a former company director, I think it's very, very easy for people to have short memories and understand and not necessarily understand just how bad things were that you've inherited. And the turnaround is pretty spectacular. I'm not going to go down the road of saying we've got the club back and all that stuff, because I know that irks an awful lot of people when we use that lyric. But
yeah.
The fact that we are still here, the fact that we can, look forward. Well, we're still from a football point of view, we've had 2 back-to-back wins, and we're still sort of there or thereabouts in the table. And we've certainly got positivity to look forward to. We wish you both the best for the weekend. And I'm going to leave you both with this point to ponder. And I won't ask you for an answer. But Greg, Rob, Kieran's tweeted to say, if Greg and Rob want more sales, then decreasing season ticket prices will drive more season tickets and match day prices and get more people in. 10k at £15 is worth more than 5k at £25. And we'll leave you with that, gentlemen.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
I think ultimately as well,
Angus.
Hannah's just like I say as well before the guys shoot. Like, to me, on a personal level, on a football fan level, I think having people like Rob and Greg that are lifelong Swindon Town fans in such important positions on the board, it's a really nice thing to see. Certainly in my time as a Swindon Town supporter, I've never had that sort of connection just on a tribal level with people in these positions. If you look back at our last CEO of, I won't say his name, but it sounds like Weave Wanderson. You know, there was never that connection, or that at least like undying support from a football club level. It's just nice to have the sort of the club and the fan connection together at boardroom level. It's just, yeah, it's a nice thing to be able to connect with.
Both of you've got skin in the game, guys, I guess is what Joe's trying to say. We've all breathed a lot of the same.
Absolutely.
Games. I think it means a lot more to us as supporters knowing. I mean, Rob, obviously we know about you, but Greg, it's been brilliant because I didn't actually realise that you've been a fan for as long as you have. So I'm sure it's lovely, very reassuring for fans to hear that we've got guys with significant business experience, but also crucially, experience of falling over chairs in the in the second leg at Charlton away. And,
Yeah,
I was
we've
there.
smiled
It's
the
good,
same
yeah.
smiles.
Confidence.
We've cried the same tears. That's the way. Look, that's what it is.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
like Joe was saying, it's amazing for confidence. No, when you've got these people that come in and start calling the shots at a club and they've got no personal affiliation with the club, they know that they can up and walk when things get difficult. So having lifelong fans that, care about the club and that they're not going to actively want to screw the club over, it really does give you confidence for the future. So thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Very welcome. Well, we'll be in the away end, won't we, Rob, this weekend at
Yeah,
Leighton Orient.
we are going to be in the
we
way.
are the real fans, so
Yeah.
we will be there with you all.
Yeah,
yeah, that's great.
With a couple of beers.
I'm
Greg,
leaving home at 6 a.m. for that game, so it's going to be a tough one.
Greg, again, congratulations on your show debut. Thank you ever so much for joining us at short notice. And
Yeah.
Rob, once again, mate, you've been on the show plenty of times before. Hopefully there'll be plenty more opportunities as well moving forward. A real pleasure to hear from you both tonight.
Thanks, fellas.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
No trouble at all, gentlemen. Well, hopefully you're more than welcome to hang around as listeners, but equally early starts tomorrow, so I'll leave that with you. And we will, as I say, true to form, we've had a glut of late tweets coming in. But as I've just said, any listeners that have just joined the show, as Rob and Greg are leaving us, Rob has asked that, has agreed for me to collate anything that comes in post their little segment. I'll get it to Rob. I will be personally accountable for that, guys. You've got my DMs are always open. So you've got free reign to berate me on your tweets and on your DMs if you don't get the answers from Rob, and I will pursue Rob as best I can to get those answers for you. If it's a particularly important question and is unseating your confidence by not having an answer. But there you go. I mean, Joe, Chris, Adam, lovely to hear from Rob and Greg, wasn't it? And Rish, like I said, I know we're at the risk of repeating ourselves. Joe, I think you made a really, really salient point there. There are a few things that came out of that segment for me. One is obviously that both the guys, we know about Rob, clearly his history at the Trust, the fact that he's local, that he's been involved in a high-profile sponsor of Swindon Town for a very long time. But Rob's history with the football club as a fan, I think, is key. It makes me feel great knowing that's the case with Greg as well. But I can only... I mean, like I said, I can only speak as I find in relation to our owner. It's really they're going to say it obviously because they're directly reporting into Clem, but they speak with pretty much sort of all the sincerity that you would want in relation to who they're reporting into, right? Yeah,
absolutely. I think on your first point there, obviously I've actually met Greg before, and I hadn't put the pieces together that he was. Like a Swindonian, which is, I should get it by the accent, really. I mean, I'm usually quite good at picking out a Swindon accent, considering I don't have one myself. It's just really nice to have. Like, you don't often see it at other clubs. And I said in that segment before that, we've, as fans, myself, you, Chris, Adam, Rob, Greg, we've smiled the same smiles, we've cried the same tears. Like, that means a lot to me. It's just something that I think, as Adam said quite rightly as well, you've got a certain level of security knowing that they're not going to actively want to hurt or harm the football club in any sense.
And I think, Joe, do you know what? I think what's also really crucial here is if either of those guys, being such long-standing fans of Swindon Town, you would think it's a very, very, on a very, very basic level, if there was anything happening in relation to our club or the existence of our club or the future of our club that was unpalatable, I just certainly I have no reason to not. I would expect both of those guys to have walked. You're not talking about fans from the last 2-3 years where they haven't got any skin in the game. You're talking about long-standing Swindon Town fans that go to games, have been to a lot of games. If there was stuff happening with our club that was in any way, shape or form unpalatable, these are the kind of characters I'd be expecting to walk away from the club.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it says a lot about the current regime against the sort of the power era. The only times you ever heard from your Steve Andersons was when something like some sort of shit had hit some sort of fan. Like, that was the only time you'd ever hear about or anything from the guy. It was, yeah, it was a different era. The communication, although the communication isn't great at the minute, and I think there are times where we really struggle with media communication through official channels, which is fairly highlighted. But from a boardroom level, it's something that we've not really experienced since, I don't even know. Have you got experienced a board that is as open and transparent as what we have currently?
Well,
maybe
listen,
Fitton, maybe, but I don't know.
My direct frame of reference on that would be the Andrew Fitton era, where obviously I was involved as shirt sponsor of the club, and so it's a slightly different one for me because obviously I was in a fortunate position where if I really wanted to, I could rattle the door, go into the boardroom and speak to Mr. Fitton, speak to Jeremy Ray, speak to Nick Watkins. I mean, I would deal, as anyone that saw the picture from the match day on Saturday, I have a fantastic relationship with Nick Watkins, who was, my conduit to the main board members. But, I mean, back then, there was any questions I had, similar spirit to Rob. I felt that I could ask any questions, and I always felt that I got an honest answer. There was never any questions around, honesty and integrity at that stage.
That's another one, though, isn't it? You know that your Fittons and your Rays and your Watkins and that sort of ilk, they were Swindon Town fans, so that's why you trusted them.
Jeremy was a West Ham fan, but
he was a Swindon fan at heart.
Yeah, but I mean, listen, Nick, Andrew, they were local businessmen, Ramsbury based. So, again, they kind of had their, they had their, they certainly had a local interest. And, I mean, I can only tell, I mean, I've mentioned this story before that Leyton Orient away, the season that we lost Paolo, the season we lost Matt Ritchie, the season it was looking also rosy, and then the wheels came off in fairly spectacular fashion. I stood at Leyton Orient with Nick Watkins in the director's box, and it was clear that, that the sale of the club was going to happen, that unfortunately that Matt Ritchie was going to have to be sold to kind of keep the club afloat for the interim period between owners.
Was that the 0-0 game?
I beg your pardon?
Was that the 0-0? Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was my first ever away game in the league. There you go.
Yeah. It was really uninspiring stuff. I had a terrible vantage point. It was absolutely bloody awful. Hated director's box at Leyton Orient. But crucially, stood there with Nick talking about, sort of integrity and being fans. Nick had tears in his eyes that night. You felt it was a real end of an era. As he's explaining to me, I was stood there with this kind of sort of doe-eyed sort of supporter face, because even whilst I was shirt sponsor, I was first and foremost always a supporter of our football club. And I was just asking Nick, I said, look, are these guys coming in the real deal? And Nick looked at me and said, look, Hannah's, as far as I've seen, everything so far is above board. It's all in order. And then he said, unfortunately, we've got to let Matt Ritchie go just to keep things sort of ticking over. And he was genuinely emotional, upset. So I guess what I'm trying to say is just sort of trying to connect that previous regime with our football club. Whether they were fans or not, they certainly cared. I mean, Nick is somebody that still comes back to the club now. He was there on Saturday, and he was, shaking hands with everybody. I mean, he was just so thrilled to be back. So people do build relationships with our football club. They do care about our football club. Not everyone in between is going to have that kind of celebrated sort of presence at our football club. Clearly, you mentioned some of the characters we're talking about, but as I said, I mean, look, I'm never going to defend our previous owner, but there were conversations, or there weren't many conversations prior to COVID, when Ritchie had us winning the league, where fans were willing to put the previous owner up on a cross. And obviously COVID exposed an awful lot. And that really was what turbocharged the discord for many, many people. There are exceptions, of course. There are people that are wiser than me, that maybe saw through it all, understood the risks. I think most of us were just quite content at that stage to see Swindon Town supposedly sort of getting to a more sustainable footing. and looking like it was going to get itself out of League One. It was out of League Two. It got itself into League One, and we were all hoping we were going to push on. And obviously, it didn't quite go to plan, did it? But anyway, listen. I mean, like I said, we'll park that segment. We got the small matter of Harrogate to celebrate. So obviously, pretty much all of my panel saw the game in some way, shape, or form. What was the? I mean, I'll tell you what my hot takes were shortly. But who wants to get the ball rolling? Silence. Adam, come on, mate.
Oh, why is it always me?
Well, you were cock a hoop on Saturday, weren't you, mate?
Well, I had a few beers, so I was a bit more excited about the game than I normally was.
At least you were there. I watched 10 minutes at a pub in Amsterdam after a heavy morning.
Oh, I was making good use of the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge.
Perks. Yeah, you were there. You were there as our. You were there making your. I think we said was it your third appearance, Adam?
Yes, I think that was my third.
So
I did deadline day, then cried about Sutton, and then.
Let's talk about that, shall we? Because as a jumping off point, it was a big improvement from Sutton, Adam, wasn't it? So I mean, just to go back and just try and encapsulate the game. Obviously, the returning Rashawn Hepburn Murphy got his first 2 goals. We've won the game 3-0 against Harrogate. We were 8 minutes in when Hutz has picked out Romeo. When Romeo Hutton's picked out Rashawn Hepburn Murphy, and he's nodded in for number 1. Rashawn's got a second goal just after half time. Again, more nice, neat football from Swindon Town. A nice assist from Jake Wakelin. And I think the line that Rashawn himself said after the game was that his mum had gone to Starbucks just as he sort of like made contact with the ball. And by the time she returned with a flat white, the ball was hitting the back of the net. Charlie Austin missed a great opportunity in the second half to increase Town's lead even further. But a smart save from the keeper kept scores as they were. We nearly let Luke Armstrong in with a little slip from Ellis Iandolo, but Solbrin's come through and saved the day. And then there's arguably the box office moment, certainly since the return of Charlie Austin, as the returning Joe Tomlinson, resplendent in his number 7 shirt, came off the bench and did what he had promised Hoops. He'd been doing it for the last 2 weeks. He'd been promising Hoops a bit of tenacity, forces a smart save from the keeper. Ball bounces up in the air. Joe's managed to direct a header goalwards, and as the ball's crossing the line, it was helped into the net by Eastman, the Harrogate centre back. Glory pie, the greatest, one of the greatest celebrations and longest celebrations I've seen at the county ground in quite a while. But I mean, Adam, what did you make of it all? It was vastly improved, wasn't it, from the fare that we've had of late? I appreciate we've had. I mean, Sutton was, it's fair to say, a nervy win, Adam. But it was a big improvement from what we saw against Doncaster, wasn't it?
Yeah, look. Yeah, at the start of the game, I was also taking part in a lot of the jeers with the consistent passing round in our own box. I've always been quite opposed to that whole idea of passing it round the back in your own area, especially when we've proven so far this season that we haven't really got the quality to be doing that and not getting ourselves endangered by doing so. But it started to pick up, you know. I couldn't understand what was going through Ellis.
So, Adam, are you saying that you were one of the fans that were booing the club, booing the boys in a way that Jody Morris described as being very immature?
I wouldn't say I was booing, but I was making the point very clear to the guys around me that I was sick to death of seeing us play like that, because we do invite a lot of unnecessary pressure sometimes.
So what prevented you from booing?
I'm not a massive fan of booing that early into a game. You know, I've got to be quite harked off to get to that level. But I was sort of making the point that, you know, I understand, the same as what Jody sort of said. He understood, but it's a bit too early to be booing like that. And I think, if you're a player and you've only been on the pitch for 5 minutes, it can put you off.
Here's a question for you then. So what if you hadn't had to sort of go through the Scott Lindsay and Ben Garner eras of following Swindon Town. Do you think you still be booing the sort of the early attempts of Morris Ball to maybe sharpen
Well,
up?
I think as well,
well, yeah,
Hammers
those
as
two
well.
don't
You've got
help in the fact that, you know, passing around the back in those two areas wasn't the greatest thing. But, you know, if we were in a position like we were under Richie Wellens, when we were turning over teams week in, week out, and we wanted to play 15 minutes passing around the back and getting comfy on the ball, I would not moan. But, you know, recently it's been happening so much, and the amount of dodgy little chances we've given the other teams for doing things like that. You know, all it takes, if we were lucky because Harrogate weren't too keen on pressing when we were doing it. But if you come across a team that is pressing you when you're playing around at the back like that, you're just giving them chance after chance. And all it takes is one dodgy pass and they're in on goal.
Mm.
thing
Sorry,
is,
Joe.
ultimately, I've been hearing boos for passing around the back since I've been going to Swindon games. Under Danny Wilson, under DiCanio, under whoever else you want. You know, it's always been the same. Fans shouting, "Get it forward from the town end," and it's just how Swindon fans are. I think it's how a lot of
I think it's lower
Football League
league in
fans are.
general, mate. Because, you know, in the Premier League, I sitting and watching the Premier League, it is very, very boring. And when I've gone to my mates who are all Liverpool fans and they sit there and watch it, I'm like, how can you watch this? Because 90% of the game is just being passed around,
You need a
which
new
I
mate,
get.
boy. Liverpool
But
fans need new mates.
League Two is very end-to-end football. You know, I think we watched Charlton and Bolton a couple of weeks ago on TV while I was waiting to go to Swindon. It was the early kickoff, I think, and my mates that were Liverpool fans were just shocked at how like end-to-end it was. It was constant attack, get the ball back, attack the other end constantly for 90 minutes. And, you know, that's the excitement I think you sort of get used to when you spend a lot of years in the lower leagues. So I get the frustration when you start to sort of muck around with it a bit because it's obviously a bit different to what you'd normally be used to with the majority of the teams.
I think as well, you've got to be patient in this division because you're playing against teams like there was boos or there was jeering at home to Sutton early in the season because we were passing it around the back and looking to work space. But ultimately, would you rather that or pump it up up the field to a Jake Wakelin who's getting crowded up by 3 9-foot blokes?
I wouldn't even say pump it upfield, mate. It would just be a case of we've got a goal kick. All right, yeah, play it to your defender. Straight away, start pressing that line. The whole back four comes up as a unit. Starts, you know, causing the strikers to go back, and then you're then creating less of a long ball if you want to start playing it up the wing. You know, it hasn't got to be a massive hoof over the top because you brought the team forward, and you can start to sort of formulate an attack from the back. Because what it was for a good few minutes on Saturday was literally just the whole back line all getting a touch on the ball going one way, and then they'd all get another touch coming back the other way, and nothing was happening.
Yeah, but a big.
If you're looking for an opportunity to burst forward, then or you're looking for a break of space and it doesn't come, you've got to just persist
But I was seeing Hutton
persist with
hitting
it.
so many runs when they were passing around the back like that, and he was screaming for the ball and just wasn't getting it.
Yeah. Well, that's where the issue is.
So, you know, aside from that, you know, I was happy with the performance. I think someone who had a bet on the game was shocked at the fact that we were 3-0 up, and according to Bet365, we didn't even have a shot on target. You know, because I think the headers don't count, and then for some reason, because Rushy absolutely spooned it, but it's still dribbled in. You know, I think that didn't count as a shot on target. But, you know, yeah, it was a much better performance. All, you know, scrappy sort of lucky goals, but we don't really get much of that. I'd say lucky, but, you know, they wasn't like show-stopping goals. But look, it was a fantastic game. I enjoyed myself, and it was much better than what we had to put up with the week before.
Well, look, Adam, Jason's tweeted just to say to you, unfortunately, Adam, the playing the ball out from the back, moving the ball from side to side to bring their players out of position is part of the game now. That's how England DNA teaches a coach. And interestingly enough, I don't think, certainly the first goal, I noticed Sol Bryn's reaction was pretty interesting. As the ball at the back of the net, he turned around and let's just say I interpreted it as being a little bit of a poisonous side eye at some of the people that might have been giving it a little bit of a boo. Because what was it, Joe? Did we count? And Chris, and indeed Adam, I think I counted, was it 10, 15 passes end to end? Some nice intricate stuff before the ball's worked out to Romeo Hutton. Swings a delicious cross to the back stick. And Romeo Hutton scores, Rashawn Hepburn Murphy scores what is a rare headed goal for his career statistics, back the other way and into the bottom right-hand corner.
Yeah, fantastic team goal, like you say. The fact that, to start popping the ball around like that and getting it in the net, fantastic. We don't do enough of it. And I know it's difficult to sort of do that on a regular basis. But yeah, that was absolutely fantastic. I did see the tweet and I liked it. I do understand that that's the way the game's going. And,
I think it's more a question of, Adam, I think realistically, I think there's all, for me, I mean, me personally, I don't know. I listen, I've got ambitions. I don't want to see us languishing around League Two. The reality is we're League Two. We've got League Two footballers. I think maybe sometimes the thought often occurs to me that we've got so much top level football to watch. We've got so much access to football these days that we get an opportunity to observe top level footballers making the game look very, very easy on ginormous TVs that cost relatively little compared to what they did 10, 15 years ago. So you've literally got the cream of world football beamed into your home 24/7, pretty much, if you want it. And then we go to the county ground on a Saturday and we're watching League Two footballers. And I don't know whether this is part of it. I think there is an expectation that, right, there's a football field, we're in a stadium, I'm expecting these guys to go out and do exactly the same thing. And I think that is wholly unrealistic. And
I think what it is I haven't been around to see all the big days of the higher leagues for Swindon. My whole time watching Swindon has been League One and League Two, probably actually more League Two than League One. And I think a lot of the fans have high expectations for the club, and I think they always will do, because you have got the old school guys that have seen Swindon in the Prem, in the Championship, sort of like holding out up there as sort of a bigger club than what they are now. And I can kind of understand it. If you've seen the club play in those teams and playing at that level, it's going to frustrate you spending so long in what is literally the lowest league in professional football. Like, if we have an absolutely god-awful season, like some of these clubs that are being left in the mud by their chairmen, we're one league away from not even being a professional team. I get the frustration.
I mean, Adam, listen, I started supporting the club in 1986. So at that point,
you've seen it all.
Yeah, well, excuse the expression, our club had got his shit together. We got ourselves an outstanding manager in Lou Macari. We turned on the afterburners. We absolutely gassed the division in 1986 with a ludicrous number of points and ludicrous number of goals scored. And then the following season, we managed to get up through the playoffs of what is now League One. But we were, again, a superb side. And then the following season, again, we were very, very competitive, made the playoffs, nearly got promoted, bar Ian Wright and Mark Bright and an outstanding Crystal Palace team at the time. We would have just continued to rise up through the leagues. Appreciate football's changed immensely. But, yeah, I mean, to your point, I didn't have to spend an awful lot of time, kicking around in the bottom division. So to me, when we finally dropped down there, it was a real shock, because I got used to our football club being an established championship club. So, but listen, we've had another tweet from Marcus. Marcus taps into the next point I wanted to get to. And good evening, Marcus. Thanks so much for your tweet. It says, booing and shouting, go forward. It happens up and down the leagues. Are we focusing too much on some booing at the last home game? Well, I'll tell you what, I think, yeah, we possibly are, Marcus, to be honest, because it was probably fair to say a minority, but very loud minority. And I'm saying that from where I was sat, sort of, I'm in the penultimate row of the town end, right behind the goal. Interestingly, though, what I did want to tap into was, I've listened to a few outlets this week, and they seem to be, this is Sam Parkin, and also listened to the guys on the LS pod. And there was this sort of feeling that the chanting and the singing directed towards Tommy Adeloy was sarcastic. Now that when I first heard it, I was like, no, listen, I literally was right in the middle of it all, and I can assure you that literally was a fan base looking to get behind a striker that has, essentially gone through some really tough times, and they're trying to give him a lift. And I can honestly say, as when they were singing, because I was surprised by the fact that there was so much singing, and the fact that the guy had 2 songs being sung about him, led to me to look around, and the thought did cross my mind, like, how much of this is people actually taking liberties? But I can honestly tell you that all the chanting that I heard directed to Tommy Adeloy wasn't sarcastic. I mean, Adam, you weren't too far away from me in the town end. What was your take on it?
Regarding with Tommy, I think what's happening is, guys, since he's got his first goal, I think that's what all the fans were waiting for. And now that he's had that goal, seeing him come on the pitch, everyone seemed to be, serious with the chance that they were, pumping out. And I thought it was good. It's probably a case of the fan base trying to build his confidence. Like, look, you've got a place at this club. The fans are behind you. This is the perfect opportunity for you in your pro career to start sort of like getting some goals on the board and making a name for yourself, and the fans will be behind you. It's very rare that the fans aren't behind a player, if truth be told. You do get a couple. We've had a couple donkeys before where people have really had gripes with the players. But, Tommy hasn't really done much wrong. Okay, as a striker, he should have more goals to his record than he does. But that's something that's going to come. Obviously, it's going to be a lot more difficult now that you've got Charlie as your out-and-out striker. But Tommy is a solid player where, like you say, where Charlie's been ending up doing a lot of stuff on the pitch. Basically, when we were talking about the youth and stuff, Charlie was doing quite a lot and he was tiring himself out. With him being prone to injury, it's good to have that option there with Tommy, who can still, he can come on and still make an impact in a game. And, you haven't lost the entire striking position. If Charlie goes off, Tommy can still hold his own.
Yeah,
I think the big thing there as well, sorry, Hadders,
is
that the big thing there, like Toby's reaction to the chance at Salford, like his face absolutely lit up when the Salford fans the Swindon fans were drowning the Salford fans out with the Adaloy chant. Like, just as a player that's had a really tough season, the confidence that must give him is massive. And I think, especially with the youthful squad that we have this season, the booing and stuff is literally not going to help. Like, we've got to really, the supporters on the ground, the positivity and the chance of players' names and stuff is going to push them on to a different level. I think we've got a squad at current that really does kind of need a little bit in the way of a tummy tickling every game. They're a bit of a puppy. You've got to G them up and look after them for them to really flourish. And I think,
like you're saying, the power of fans cannot be underestimated. The way I always see it is, put yourselves in the shoes of a professional footballer. If you're on the pitch in front of 10,000 people and your name is getting shouted around the whole place, imagine what that does for your confidence, your adrenaline, your need to sort of succeed and sort of prove to them that, you're shouting my name, I'm going to give you something to shout about, and it's
I mean, I sat in a meeting yesterday, I got my pants absolutely pulled down by one bloke on a fucking Teams call, and I came out of that meeting and did nothing all day. And I think,
there you are.
Time's up by 10,000.
Well, look, as far as I'm concerned, he looked good. He looked fine. He looked good. He looked fine. Adaloy's been on my mind, and I'll tell you this for nothing. We really need to step up with some of the support of the lads out on the pitch as well. I think I mentioned the guys earlier. I think Rich and the boys mentioned on the LS pod earlier this week about it's galling the number of assists that Romeo Hutton has created this season, and not once have I heard anyone attempt to call him the star man running down the right. His name's Romeo Hutton, and he's fudging dynamite. So listen, there's a time and a place for every song, but I mean, sometimes I do wonder whether there's a feeling that I don't know, a little bit of shyness amongst the town fans that if you're going to start trying to sing a new song that, I don't know, maybe you're a bit too cool for school and it's not going to take off. Bottom line is, I agree with you wholeheartedly, Joe. Like, there's 11 lads out there at the moment that need as much support as possible. It's a young squad. You're only going to help by supporting them. But here's the interesting thing. I think going back to Tommy Adaloy, I remember watching Alan Reeves in the early 2000s go through. Once he signed from Wimbledon, and initially he was seen as being a little bit of a cart horse, not particularly great on the deck playing for a football club that is renowned for playing really nice football. And here was a kind of fairly agricultural centre back from the latter phases of the crazy gang. Reeves was a real kind of figure of fun. And then over a period of time, I think the fans sort of again saw a guy that, you know what, fundamentally this guy is just trying, he's giving everything. And then Reeves ended up becoming a real cult hero and went on to become assistant manager under Ife Nora. So I see a similar kind of sort of bounce back vibe with the crowd kind of getting behind Tommy Adeloye. But I just wanted to make that point really, really clear, because it has been floated this week. I wouldn't want, and I'm not saying this just to make Tommy feel better, I genuinely did not sense there was any kind of feeling of taking the piss with Tommy Adeloye. I really did feel that was Swindon fans actually putting their best foot forward on Saturday. We're very, very quick to hammer our supporters. Let's be clear. Very, very quick to hammer our supporters. And we're very quick to talk about the booing and how that was misplaced and all the rest of it. For me, it was fantastic seeing a large group of Swindon Town fans getting behind a guy that's had a very, very tough time in front of our support.
To be fair, I've sat here and I've said that the booing isn't needed and stuff, and I've kind of, criticised our fans a little bit. I love Swindon fans. I think we've got a great fan base. I think when we need to, we do really pull together, and I think we can. Honestly, I'd say we've won promotions for the football club over the years. The fan base during the Welland season, oh my god, like it was absolutely popping.
100%.
Even just this season, our away following has just been great. With most teams, apart from Barrow, I think we've had a pretty good following. Everything, and we backed them.
You look at our away following as well. The fact that the majority of the teams that we have in League Two this season are very, very long trips, and for a lot of the other clubs, especially let's talk about the majority of them are northern. Apart from the few sort of like couple-hour trips we've got by us, everything's up north, and these northern teams have small trips to go to see most of their away games this season.
Adam, you would actually
and we're
be
still
surprised.
doing them in terms of attendance.
You would be surprised that actually we're in the lower half of total miles travelled this season.
That can't be, surely.
No,
it
is true, partly because of the difference between top to bottom. But I think we were about
it's the EFL League Two North these days.
I think we're about 14th in the division for miles travelled. So I don't think that's really an excuse we can use.
Wow.
That's because we've got people like you living up north, mate.
Because when you've got teams like Carlisle, Salford, you've got
Barrows,
Grimsby, all these teams like that. These are teams that are miles away, and our nearest games this year have been Gillingham, Leyton Orient, and Newport. They're really our closest games.
But you've also got those northern teams who are also having to go to Crawley, Gillingham, a couple of London teams. So that's where it balances out.
Of course, yeah, of course.
Well, listen, Luke's tweeted. Hello, Luke. Good evening to you, pal. Thank you ever so much for your message. Luke's messaged, in fact. And he's shown a really interesting tweet from Angus McDonald, and I'm kind of inclined to agree with you, Luke. Luke thinks that Angus has given us a little sly dig with a tweet where he said, and I quote, Angus McDonald's quoted saying, "I enjoyed playing at Petodgery. The fans are fantastic. They get right behind the players." It does have the kind of feeling of a little bit of side eye, a little bit of a knowing kind of poking the ribs. I think the big difference between us and obviously Aberdeen, however, Angus, should you be having a little bit of a dig at us, our erstwhile captain, is I don't think Aberdeen have had anywhere near the level of off-field impropriety and crisis to deal with that we've had to deal with, and their resources are significantly bigger and better than ours. It should be pointed out, obviously, on their lofty perch in the Scottish Premier League. So
we can't sit here and say that Swindon Town are a bigger club than Aberdeen. We can't sit here and say that.
Of course,
what we can sit here and say is that, quite frankly, you're being a prick.
Well, allegedly. But Jason's tweeted, just to sort of like round off what we're saying, look, it's a cliche, but if the fans get behind the team, it does give you that extra 10%. Look, at the end of the day, it can't hurt, can it? And I think at some point, we as a fan base have got to turn around and go, look, come on, more can be done here. Like the one thing that I would be saying is that our fan base is only going to be as noisy as as you and the individual next to you are sitting in that ground are going to allow it to be, and then let it grow. Everyone's got to take some collective responsibility for just opening their mouths and making some noise. It's really quite simple, and I really do get a little bit ticked off when I hear people going, "Oh, Townend are quiet this week. Oh, Townend this, Townend." Well, who cares what the Townend's doing? If you're sat in the Don Rogers or you're sat in the Arkles, open your mouths. you know, as long as I've been a supporter, I can't remember ever hearing the Arkles sort of stand starting a song.
Never.
And the Arkles has got what, 4,000 fans in it?
Even when we were top of the league with Richie Wellens, there was never any noise from the Arkles. The most noise you get from the Arkles is if someone spooned a shot out for a throw-in and they applauded it. That's the only time the Arkles make any noise.
I've only sat in the Arkles once, and it was Swindon against Notts County in, I think, 2014. I think we won 4-1. Rangers scored 2 goals. And I sat in the very, very top right-hand corner of the Arkles. I couldn't see the goal at the town end. It was the worst, the worst atmosphere I've ever had, the worst view I've ever had. And,
you know,
never again.
Considering the away fans are in the Arkles, you know, you don't even get a huge amount of fans going up to that corner to sort of give them stick. You know, a lot of grounds, the noisy fans are next to the away fans. And, you know, with our case, you always see that the away fans always start giving, you know, shit to the Arkles, which realistically is a family stand.
Come on, Joe. We were in the Arkles for the Orient game.
Only for one half, though.
Well, listen, I mean, I hope my point stands up here, which is that, you know, listen, at the end of the day, the ground's only going to be as noisy as we all individually want it to be. And my message to, you know, anybody that will be listening to this show is that, you know, don't worry about what other people are doing. Just take responsibility for the amount of noise that you're making, and don't be embarrassed about it. And at the end of the day, if you are sitting in the Arkles and you've got people moaning, telling you pipe down or whatever, then, you know, maybe go with 2 or 3 other people that want to make a bit of racket, and then collectively make a bit of racket, and so on and so on and so on and so forth. I know for a fact, I can tell you this wholeheartedly, the club would like the Arkles to be loud. The club would like the Don Rogers to be loud. And I personally, as someone that sits in the town end, would like to see both those other stands being able to bounce backwards and forwards with the town end, just like we saw under the Richie Wellens era, when We Are Wellens Red and White Army was being bounced in between the stands. And
that's just a game. My days.
Unbelievable.
That's what we want week in, week out. We want Exeter at home in 2020.
Yep, that's exactly what we want. We want that flavour of Man City. We want that flavour of Exeter. And we can do it as a bunch of supporters when we want to do it.
But we only do it when the team are performing on the pitch.
Well,
you know, I think being 10th in the league and expecting, you know, top of the league atmosphere is going to be a big ask at the minute.
Yeah, it works in tandem, though. If we perform, they perform. If they perform, we perform. Let's find a middle ground.
Well, listen, at the end of the day, I'm a big believer in controlling your own destiny. Let's not wait for other people to get us off our seats. Let's start getting off our seats, and let's just continue to do it and show a bit of persistence, because you can only control the controllables, can't you, Joe? And the controllables are that I can stand up and I can start making a bit of racket and I can get behind my team. I can control that. I can't control what Jody Morris is going to put out on the pitch in front of me. But I tell you what, if Jody Morris puts out an absolute load of dog tripe, I will enjoy myself significantly more on a Saturday if I've got up and made a load of noise and I'm leaving the ground with a sore throat than if I've just sat there and moaned and groaned and screamed and booed and just basically looked around at all these other miserable faces that are doing exactly the same thing. I think there does need to be a little bit of a shift in the psychology of the Swindon Town fan. At the same time, having had the best part of 40 years worth of kicking the nuts, I understand why there are some fans that sort of sit there and say, come on, you owe me one now. I do get it.
Yeah, I totally agree with it. I agree with you there as well, Hatters. Like, we've experienced good times. We've experienced probably bad times even more so. But going back to the whole point, we were booing at the start of a game at which we won 3-0. So it's like, you know, you've just got to just eke it out a little bit, go with the flow, trust the process, as people like to say, and see where it takes us. I mean, we've gone through the booing thing quite a lot. We're talking about a game here that we won 3-0 ultimately, and it's like,
but the booing 3 or 4 minutes
instead of trusting the process, how about we all just trust each other? Like, how about we all trust each other in the stands to just make a bloody big noise? And
for 90 minutes a week, or 180 minutes a week, we've got a midweek game. Let's just go out there and, as tribal brothers and sisters, let's just give it all for 90 minutes and see where it takes us.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I've got to tell you, as a really, really good example, whether you like or hate the club, the support that Leeds United provide their team, and their team's not exactly been setting the world alight, but the support that they provide their team more often than not is absolutely unbelievable during the 90 minutes of a match. They'll pipe off at the end and they'll pipe off at the start if they're not particularly happy about stuff. And again, recently, Everton, similar story. Everton decided to take pot shots at their board, but they parked it for 90 minutes during the game. So I think that's kind of what I'm saying. Is like, look, we can all control whether or not we want to make a load of noise within our stadium. We can all control whether we just want to sit there with our arms folded and have a sulk. And I know driving 240 miles from my London Kent border home up to the county ground on a Saturday, I know which of the two that I prefer. So it's up to us, really, isn't it? And we've got a couple of weeks where we're going to be starved of a bit of football. Hopefully the boys do the business in London on Saturday, but starved of a little bit of home football, I should say. We've got a couple of weeks to get our shopping order before we take on Carlisle back at our place. Let's see what we can do about it. But anyway, listen, let's park. We're dropping a little bit behind schedule. We'll park Harrogate. But anyway, like I say, good to have second win on the bounce. But in a generally frustrating season versus our expectations thus far, moments have been absolutely key. We talked earlier, didn't we, about Joe Tomlinson's goal on Saturday. We talked about Charlie Austin earlier in the season. But if this season doesn't reach the highs that so many of us have dreamt it would, two moments are going to go down in STFC folklore. And those are the two I've just mentioned. Charlie Austin scoring on his return to the club versus Grimsby, and the slightly more unlikely repeating of the goal-scoring debut of Joe Tomlinson. And the moment that followed was truly wonderful. Both of those moments are a reminder that as supporters of Swindon Town, more often than not, it's those moments, those rare gems that delight us and drag us back when we're at our lowest ebb. So much so that there's so much to love about those moments. A timely chant, an iconic kit, a celebration, facial expression, even the sound of a ball heading against the woodwork. We've all got moments, haven't we, that have dragged us back when we were at our desperate worst. So here's looking at you, Craig Maskell. We are going to start having a look at Swindon Town fans' top 3 greatest moments. And we've got my son and heir joining our show shortly, but he's not.
I am here. I'm literally about to walk into my flat, so you're gonna have to bear with me.
Well, don't do that. You've got a stable connection. Stay where you are. So listen,
you can't make me sit outside of my flat. Like, I'm on a student road. It's just gonna be.
I absolutely can. You've been sat in worse, mate, in your first year of being a student.
You'll have a connection like Joe that keeps cutting out.
Bear with me. I'm just going to sit in this corner then.
So listen, Archer, I've been dragging you to the county ground since you were 4 years old, and you gave me your 3 top moments.
Yes.
And I'm going to get you to walk us through what makes those moments so special.
Right, no worries.
I'll do them in reverse order.
Okay.
Your first one is something that was really, really quite emotive for me. We both share a wonderful story and a different perspective on this.
Yes.
And it was you ended up on the pitch after Swindon Town 5, Port Vale 0, Pablo Di Canio's sort of closing fixture that season. Tell us all about it.
So, I mean, in the kind of jagged memories I've got left of that, it was a little while ago now, when you really think about it. But I remember being up in Hospo with you, funny enough. And I remember full-time whistle going and seeing everyone run onto the pitch and wanting to go down and obviously join in. Little me didn't really understand, you sat in hospitality, you're not really meant to do that. But I remember turning to you and saying, Dad, we need to go on the pitch. Everyone's going on the pitch. And you saying, no, we can't do that. And me saying, basically guilt-tripping you into it. And I
Puss in Boots eyes.
Yeah, I do recall you getting in quite a bit of trouble for this, to some extent. But I remember then you giving me the nod and us running down and jumping on the pitch, which was it was quite something. I think we've got a photo, haven't we, of us on the pitch.
You'll remember me distracting a steward that tried to prevent us from entering the playing space.
Yes,
Archer.
yeah.
And I sort of pointed and went, "Look, what's that over there?" And as he did that, you sort of leapt an advertising hoarding and then sprinted out onto the pitch.
Absolutely unreal.
And I, of course, as a doting father, had to go and get my my young son off the playing field. Obviously,
how much was the bail?
all I'll tell you is this: my phone went off, Chris. My phone went off, and I've looked at my phone, and on my phone was Nick
Am I allowed
Watkins.
to quickly go inside my flat while we're here?
Oh, please do.
Stuff. Give me a second. I'm going.
So, Chris, my mobile read Nick Watkins, Chief Executive Officer, Swindon Town Football Club, and I've looked down. I thought, I know what's going to happen. I know what this is about. And I looked up in the stands, and there was Nick, immaculate as always, perfect. His tie just perfectly knotted, and he's literally got his arm out, and he's got a finger in the air, and he's just wagging his finger left and right, left and right, left and right. And I kind of, as I ascended the steps again with my head hung in shame, the chief executive offered this view on my foolish act, which was, now, dear Hannahs, I don't think entering the playing space is the behaviour expected of one's shirt sponsor, is it? So, I ended up in the doghouse, but nonetheless, we survived again we survived as shirt sponsors for another 3 or 4 years. So I don't think Nick held it against me. Now Archer's now gone into his student accommodation. Can you still hear?
I'm nearly there. Bear with me.
Oh my God! Well, Archer's well and truly in the tunnel. So, shall I tell our dear listeners, Arch, what your second option is?
No. 1 second.
All right. Well, look. While you sort yourself out, we'll move on to.
I'm here. I think.
All right.
Yeah, I'm in. All right, lad. Oh, brilliant. 1 second.
So your second special moment, Arch. What is it? Oh, well, for goodness sake! All right, we'll park him for the time being. We'll park him. Right. So we've got none other than Andrew Hawes, BBC Radio Wiltshire's Andrew Hawes, who's given me his 3 favourite commentary moments, which I'm delighted to share with you. Now, Joe, Chris, when Archer's got his arse back into gear, and Adam, I'll get your thoughts on Andrew's selection, and I'll do them in reverse order. Andrew selected Louis Reed versus Barrow last year, and Andrew says, going down the other end and scoring straight after the equaliser, and he'd never seen a goal more passed into the net from his lofty position in the county ground. That was a wonderful moment, wasn't it, Joe?
Yeah, it really was. I wasn't at the game actually. I was around my girlfriend's parents' house, and it was one of the first times that I'd met her extended family, and we were all having a really sort of a nice barbecue, very, very sort of friendly, and also one of those ones where when you're meeting family for the first time, you're trying to be as cool and collective as possible. And I could have ripped my shirt off and run across the field. I'm not gonna lie.
I remember that game because I was at a family camping trip in Cumbria, and I was all over the site trying to get reception just to watch it come in on Twitter. And by the time I actually did, it was about 3 or 4 minutes after the equaliser, and I thought, oh hell! And then next time I got it, Reed had scored.
Yeah, I think I actually was sat on the toilet before I could look at the score. I sat on the toilet and I literally looked, and it was like 85 minutes, 1-1, and I was like, "Oh yeah, we've just fucked this." And as I walked outside, it must have been like 2 or 3 minutes after the equaliser, we scored the winner. And literally, scenes in the back garden.
Truly wonderful. What about you, Adam? Were you at the game?
Was this Barrow away? Was it?
No, Barrow at home, and Louis Reed's basically.
Was that the one where they opened up the Stratton Bank for the home fans?
Yes, that's the very same.
Yes, I do remember that happening. No, I wasn't there. I can't remember what I was doing. I must have been at work or something.
Well, I'll tell you the wonderful moment that I remember tied to that Louis Reed moment was. So Louis had been in regular contact with us throughout the year. We first met Louis as a collective, as a show, at the end of season awards, both in terms of our own and also the club's sponsors and the official supporters awards. And we've met Louis several times, and we went on to have a really, really nice dialogue with Louis through to the end of the season, including Warsaw away and whatnot. The thing that was really interesting about that particular game, as Andrew points out, so they've equalised, and we've gone obviously straight down the other end of the pitch, and their defence just seemed, from my viewpoint, central defender and the right back, I think it was, there was just this chasm that opened up between them. And you could see the bottom right-hand corner was just begging for a finish. And if you were going to look for one of the technicians in our team to make connection with that, you would have expected it to be Jack Payne, but you would have kind of hoped it to be Louis Reed, because you just get a feeling with Louis Reed, he was like a machine that season. Anyway, cut long story short, just before Louis Reed connected or wound his leg back to strike, there was the biggest collection of shoots that all seemed to be totally synchronized. And it was brilliantly captured on a video from the town end that my daughter posted on Twitter. So good, in fact. It's still on there. Go and have a look at AB's STFC clips. And I think it's a pinned tweet. But have a little watch of that as a really special moment. Andrew's second moment that he selected was Sam Rickett's header versus Sheffield United away in the playoffs. He said it just looked from his vantage point up in the stands, it just looked so salmon-esque, according to Andrew.
I think he's actually he actually is from Swindon as well, isn't he, Sam Ricketts?
Go on, the new one on me, Chris.
He's either from Swindon or is a Swindon fan. It seems to recall something about that.
He was born in Aylesbury.
Yeah.
Aylesbury born Sam Ricketts, but I mean, obviously that was the most bonkers. We're going to get to that because the playoffs were utterly bonkers that particular season. Now, unsurprisingly, Andrew has selected Owen Doyle as his ultimate commentary moment since he's been commentating over Swindon Town. And he says, Owen Doyle's winner versus Plymouth away. I'm selecting it partly because I was right next to the away end doing comms from behind the goal. What a moment that must have been. So we're talking, Joe, aren't we? Man, love and beer was the Owen Doyle quote himself. He loved that moment, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I put some bits up on the Instagram account just previewing tonight's show, and obviously I had to put the Doyle picture in there on the Instagram story, and I was thinking of a caption, and I wanted to put, I don't know, a description of the goal or the date and time of the goal and stuff, but literally, man, love and beer, to me, is Swindon folklore, and it will stay that way forever.
It was, I'll tell you what was really special about that as well. At that moment in time, it was a shame because obviously we lost Doyle shortly after, didn't we? But he really was at the peak of his powers for us, wasn't he, at that moment?
He, honestly, the way that I would describe it, if I'm looking at current football, to me, he's what Marcus Rashford is at the minute. It's just inevitable. Like, every time he walked out on that pitch, he was getting a goal. And it was, it was certain, it was without fail, it would happen every single match. And that goal, like, I wasn't at the game, but I was actually in bed. Me and my girlfriend went out for New Year's Eve, and we got absolutely ratted. It was one of the worst hangovers I've ever had in my life. I was in bed watching it on iPhone on the telly. She was passed out next to me, and that goal went in. I got a telling off for the celebrations, and I'm pretty sure I threw up straight after the goal because I got so excited.
That season,
and screamed.
My two favourite moments were that goal from Doyle, and even though we didn't score, Doyle actually made the next one, was Leiden at Northampton. And what a night
unbelievable.
That was.
Owen Doyle is one of those players. I feel bad for him because he was really robbed of a record-breaking season that season. With the Bradford fiasco and the COVID thing, if that never happened, if Bradford never pulled him back and he carried on his form, I think that man would have had a 40-plus season.
Do you think, here's one for you, for the panel, if Doyle stays on next season, do we stay up?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a shadow of a doubt. The guy scored goals in a season where we couldn't score goals. So, yeah.
I mean, it was a team around him as well. The delivery was on point. And, we still didn't... When we went up, we had still a very good squad, if not slightly improved. So, having him still on the end of it, that's what... When he left, I think that's when things started going downhill again, because the way that did he go to Bolton or first, or...
Yeah, he went, to be fair,
Bolton just didn't work.
He was 30-odd years old. He went to Bolton, he lived in Liverpool. He was getting more money. He was closer to home. I think from a personal point of view, we can't really stand in the way of it.
No, yeah, it made
genuinely
sense.
believe 100%. If we had fans on the ground, he stays at Swindon.
It made sense.
Losing Doughty that season was massive as well.
Yeah, it really was. I think that with Doughty, it kind of it sucked a certain spirit and a certain class out of the midfield. I think there were certain loan players that came in that started brilliantly, and then a combination of illness and injury really caught up with them. Johnny Smith being a classic example.
And Sheridan.
Yeah, just didn't really fire. And then, of course, the John Sheridan saga towards the end of the season, when there was a real moment, I think it was after Gillingham, wasn't it? There was a real moment where we felt that, actually, do you know what? It feels like it's still in our own hands. And then Sheridan decided to stay, or was advised to stay. And the rest, as they say, is history. But, let's not go back and lament that season. I just think, I'll tell you the lovely thing about Owen Doyle, though, going back to Andrew's top three, because we've had so many top threes. I want to make sure that we get them all in. Owen Doyle remains the first footballer in my history of supporting Swindon Town, and Arch will vouch for me on this front, that I actually felt compelled to seek out and be filmed hugging the man.
Yeah, because I had to film it.
Hang on. I've got a video of you hugging Sol Bryn.
Oh, no. Yeah. So,
No,
first.
first.
No, Doyle
the first. Okay, right.
Doyle was first, and I enjoyed it so much. And Doyle smelled so good that I had to make a point of hugging Sol Bryn. And let me tell you something about Sol Bryn. Sol Bryn smells like James Bond. That's all I'm going to tell you.
Does Doyle smell like Guinness and corned beef? I hope he does.
No. Oh, well, no, he certainly doesn't. Doyle had the delightful whiff of Eau Sauvage about him, let me tell you. But listen, we'll go back to Arch, because he's back on the mic. He's got himself a nice perch. Arch, your second moment. Tell us about your second moment.
Go on, Arch.
Right.
Wrap this up.
Okay, so it was funny enough. We won't talk about the result, but my second favourite moment was standing, I remember, at the top of Wembley Way, having just come out the train station against Millwall in that playoff finals. I remember we had travelled in on a train from London with all of the Millwall fans. Obviously, to me, I had no clue what that meant. I'm sure my dad can elaborate a little more on what that was like, because I had no clue about really what Millwall as a club were like, all of that jazz. But yeah, I just remember the feeling of standing up there at the very top of Wembley Way, at the top of the steps, just before you come down, and you've got like the big old long road into Wembley, and that feeling of just seeing like a road full of football fans with Wembley in the background. That feeling was just was different class to young version of me.
Arch, you'll remember that day. So I'll add some context, dear listener. So obviously we travel in from we travelled in that day from Croydon. At that stage, you're in sort of Crystal Palace heartland. Really, you're getting on a train. The train rolls through. Where was it? We stopped. So we stopped at Clapham Junction, I think, when the train just suddenly absolutely filled, full of blue and white, and we were the only slivers of red and white on the train.
I got on a train at Clapham Junction, actually, and it was full of Millwall fans.
Oh,
so I might have been on there with you.
Yeah, we got absolutely. I mean, obviously, we were getting pelters, but the nice thing about it was we were being well looked after by Millwall fans. But the fun and games really started when we pulled into Wembley Park, and as the train pulled to a stop, the doors opened, and the lads that were looking after us said, "Right, you're on your own now, lads." And as we got out of the train, do you remember, Arch, as we got to the top of those steps at Wembley Park and we looked down, what was happening then? Do you remember that moment?
Didn't we have a bunch of Millwall fans singing "Who Are You" to us at the top of
a bunch? There was about 2,000 Millwall fans. Under the Bobby Moore Bridge, and it literally, they parted like the Red Sea to let us through. But walking down the stairs was the biggest cacophony of boos and verbal abuse you have ever heard in your life. And it literally was. We were the only Swindon fans walking down the stairs into the biggest mob of Millwall fans you've ever seen. But they were brilliant, weren't they, Arch? We got to the bottom, and then it was all pats on the back and big smiles and handshakes.
Yeah, it was. To be fair, it was different class, except my flag having cigarette burns in it at the end of the day. I do remember that, and being unsure why that was a thing. But yeah, no, it was class. It was really good.
All right, but then then what is your final selection, Arch? That was your final selection. Oh no, you've got one more, haven't you?
One more, yeah. So it's one that people probably be seeing coming. probably the highlight of quite a few people's last season was the moment Maka scored that consolation goal against Man City.
What a moment!
I'm sure that is shared amongst quite a few Swindon fans, especially being recent memory. But yeah, it was different class being in the town end, watching that goal go in, and just the absolute limbs at 3-0 down. It was just different class, and it is one of those. It's just that feeling of sheer joy that you just can't really comprehend. You can't really put into words.
It was that feeling that we were back, Arch, wasn't it? It was that feeling that we really, truly had survived.
Yeah.
And here is our club putting its best foot forward in a way that maybe I took for granted. You know, in the late 80s, through the 90s, the Premier League, I saw our club do that on a regular. And then it had been so long since we'd seen our club do.
I mean, and that's the first time, really, if you think about it, that I would have seen it as well. I think.
It's different gravy. I couldn't believe it. Sorry, I'm just banging in with 10 pence before I head off because I've got a long day tomorrow. Different gravy. The only issue was that we didn't score first in that game, which was quite irritating. But it was like, you know, being sat in the town end and being 5 feet away from players that are earning 300 grand a week was absolutely surreal. To have it in your hometown, and you know, like you say, the absolute limbs for a consolation goal. I've never seen anything like it.
I think also thinking about it, when that tackle from Kessler Hayden, when he tracked back on De Bruyne and absolutely wiped him out, that was different gravy as well. I remember,
like welcome to Swindon, son. That's what that is.
It was
the frustrating thing about that game was though that we just gifted them their first 2 goals by just faffing about,
passing around the back.
Gifted them.
Yeah, but then you think about it, we were trying to play good football against Man City, and it was like
the best team in England, and we were trying to pass it round, which is something we didn't even do for the whole of that season. That was like that one-off that we did
stuck to our principles, though, much like we did in the Premier League in 1993. We won a lot of fans through the irony of us sticking to our principles, dying on our sword.
Of course. But I must say, guys, enjoy the rest of the show. I am going to have to head off. I didn't want to leave abruptly this week.
Great to have you with us, Adam. Thanks ever so much, pal, as always.
Of course. Right, enjoy the rest of the moments, and I will catch you again soon for the next cry if we lose on Saturday, which I hope we don't.
No, we won't, mate. Take good care of yourself. We'll catch up with you very soon.
Yes, take care, everybody.
Well, listen, I'll drop my moments on you, and they're not really there for discussion because I want to focus on everyone else's. But here were mine. When the final whistle went at Wembley in 1990, I spontaneously burst into tears in a way that I have only ever done since on my wedding day, and crucially on the birth of Arch, who's just been speaking.
Let's go.
And his twin sister Sid. But I knew then, if there was any doubt, I knew then it was true love. I think my second moment was Charlie's goal scoring return. For me, there was an awful lot of baggage wrapped up in that, going right the way back to when 442 agreed to become shirt sponsors of Swindon Town in 2008, 2009. And then the getting to know Charlie when he had the same kind of profile that maybe, say, Harry Parsons has got at our club now, you know, young lad with his whole future ahead of him, to then observe Charlie go off and have the career that he's had and then come back and score. And I'll never forget the moment when Joe grabbed me and turned me round and said, Hannah's, look. And I turned around and I was absolutely losing it in the town end. But I've glanced at and literally grown men crying their eyes out. That was a very, very special moment I hope isn't going to end up being, the moment we remember this season for. But Charlie's goal scoring return was pretty special. And then the Charlton playoff semi-final second leg celebrations. What absolute carnage. The seesaw nature of that game. But the one thing that I remember from that game, and I wonder whether how many people are listening in tonight, and tweet us if you do remember this, but there was a Charlton fan that was basically doing what we talked about earlier in the Arkles. He was in the Charlton end, and he was sat sort of pretty detached from all the other Charlton fans, and he was giving us absolute dog's abuse from afar. He was mocking us something rotten when we were losing at half time. And then when it's looking like we're going out, he was giving us absolute pelters, and he was mocking, he was taking a and I just couldn't help but keep looking over and seeing this guy. And I was like, I'd love to throttle you, pal. I would literally love to connect my size 10s and send you into orbit. But the joy that exploded and the whole "you're not singing anymore," and he stood there at the end as well and applauded the Swindon fans in a totally unsarcastic manner, which I thought was fantastic, because you couldn't help but respect what Swindon had achieved that night, going down to 10 men and clawing it back the way that we had. A special mention to Carlisle at home. Last season, I had tears in my eyes. I think most of us did. That just sort of felt that, you know, we had survived. When the foghorn went off and the players came out on the pitch, that really was some moment. And then another moment that I shared with Arch, the playoff semi-final away at Brentford, when I very nearly launched Archer off of the top tier. And I'm not joking, very nearly launched Archer off of the top tier, as he will vouch. That was a bit special. But moving on, we've had...
yeah, I can confirm that did happen.
You weren't happy, were you? So we've had Max has sent us his top three, and Max has said Sheffield United away, the winner from Nathan Byrne. Yeah, what a special moment that was late in the game, and what a cracking player Nathan Byrne, and crucially, what a cracking kit as well. The purple Adidas and the celebration, the two-handed Ronaldo at the camera, and the old sort of binoculars to the eyes as well. What a moment that was. That's Max's first pick. His second pick was Scunthorpe away last year. He said the whole day was incredible, but the main moment was Gladwin's goal, having the club and football back. Yeah, and he concurs on his third choice. He's also picked Charlie Austin's return goal. He said for him, it was about getting to watch his childhood hero return and score. And it was also, on a personal level, his first game with his dad in 7 odd years. As you probably gathered tonight, with my own son listening in and taking part in the show, father, sons and football was something really, really special about it. Jason's tweeted in to say that his favourite moment, he's just sent us the one, but it was Birmingham 4, Swindon Town 6. Of course, the 1992-93 season where we got promoted to the Premier League. What a season where some of the football was obscene. And for those that are of a younger persuasion, just imagine being 4-1 down away from home at half-time. Glenn Hoddle coming out in the second half and moving himself into midfield and just being the absolute maestro that the greatest, arguably, midfielder of his generation, we all knew he could be. And he pretty much flipped that game on its head, took total control of it, and we've ended up winning the game 6-4. And when the 6th goal goes in, the reaction of the Birmingham goalkeeper is just worth going on YouTube and looking for it. It's absolutely tremendous. Ellis tweeted in to say his 1, 2, 3 is number 1, McCurdy, which Arch so brilliantly described, and the Man City whole game was really quite special. Walsall away last season was his second best Swindon Town moment. And I think what's really special about that moment, and I mean, I'll take a comment from you on this, guys, because it's the first time we talked about Walsall away. The volume of Swindon Town fans that we took away to little old Walsall, I mean, we really did take over the ground that day, didn't we? I mean, Chris, a little closer to you. So do you want to... I mean, the first time you and my paths crossed, it seemed to be one of those days where everybody ended up meeting someone that they'd never met before, but yet maybe spoken to on Twitter or...
Yeah, and it was the first time and only time I've ever met Marley.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. Marley, the king, of course, of all
Yeah, it was also the first time I met Dan Designs.
Yeah,
but I was...
Archer was dressed as a dinosaur.
Yeah. See, I was behind the goal, but you were on the side there, weren't you?
We were.
Yeah, but like I say, you know, the noise in there, and literally 10 rows behind me was obviously after they'd left Tyree Simpson and Kesler Hayden. So, you know, it's even the lone players were like in with us.
Well, I'll take your Kane Kesler Hayden, and I'll take your Tyree Simpson, and I'll raise you a minnow goat who was stood with me. Minnow Goat and Andy Minturn, his dad, they were stood with us, and I've got a brilliant photo of it that's been lovingly captured by the official club photographer. Minnow Goat and his dad joining in with all the songs, us all singing our hearts out. If ever there was a player that's one of our own, the Minnow Goat proved it to me that day. Let me tell you.
And there's on Ashley's video that day as well, when Payne scored the second goal. As soon as it left his foot, you could just hear you saying, "It's in, it's in."
Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, true. It was just so obvious, wasn't it? But I mean, we were scintillating that day as well out on the pitch. Absolutely.
But we just won the game in the first half, and then we showboat in the second half.
That was the day I went in the dinosaur costume as well, wasn't it?
It was, Art. Yeah, the very same.
Different gravy that game, honestly. That's the first and only time I've ever been offered out by a home fan, and absolutely brilliant. I remember him saying, I remember him signalling across to me, "We're gonna come back," or like to along those words, like giving it effing and jeffing. And then I remember the third goal going in, throwing up 3 fingers, giving him the shush, and then he offered me outside, and then got kicked out by the police. That is genuinely one.
And we had more fans than them as well.
It was unreal.
The reason you gave him 3 fingers was you were dressed as a velociraptor. You couldn't do anything but give him fairness.
To be fair, that was still like, it's just absolutely unreal. Like, if I was to change that list, that definitely would be on there. Thinking about it,
I can remember as well going back to the station when there was a massive queue, and I was the only one who was going the other way.
Yeah, that's right, Chris. That's right. I remember that as well. Because it was like, well, we could stay all day, but Chris was missing all the trains that he could get on. Well, look, Ellis's third choice. Again, the power of being a mascot to all you dads out there. Ellis said, being a mascot in Paolo Di Canio's season, he was away to Portsmouth, and he said Paolo Di Canio smelled very nice, but I bet he didn't smell as good as Sol Bryn, Ellis. Darren's tweeted in to say his top 3. Charlton in the playoffs was really special, both home and away games. The town end for the home leg was utterly mental. When Danny Ward scored, I went from the back to the front and my feet didn't touch the floor. Yeah, it was a little bit like that when the McCurdy goal went in against Man City. I can't lie. He also says that season, Leeds away, that really will take some beating. Leeds would chuff to see the back of us at the end of that season. The irony, of course, is that Leeds went up and we didn't, but we battered them home and away that season. We were utterly superb. And interestingly, his third choice, Darren's third choice, Reading away in 2001 when Razor Ruddock was still playing. Still the best away game that I've ever been to. When the early days of Razor, there was so much promise, wasn't there? Roy Evans, Razor. I mean, it was the start of another era. It's what we were talking to Greg and Rob about earlier, wasn't it? Greg and Rob earlier about this, all the air that we've shared and all the disappointment that we've shared together. Obviously, the wheels came off in spectacular fashion, but the early days of Roy Evans and Razor Ruddock there was a lot to be looking forward to. I don't think we quite envisaged it was going to end the way that it would. But Chris, now your top 3, you've got a really interesting top 3. We've already talked about for Swindon 6, so we don't necessarily need to go into great detail there. And Wembley 1993 we've touched on, but what's so special about Wembley 93 apart from the obvious?
I don't know. It was just the fact to me. I remember I was, I was a teenager at the time, and I had no idea I was going to the game. So my dad says to me, "Oh, let's go to your godfather's because we're going to pick up some paving slabs." So obviously, when I got there,
what an afternoon that is!
Yeah, and when I got there, I just got the surprise. "Oh, you're off to Wembley." So that was something that caught me to surprise. But then to go in the game, it was. And then obviously the goal at the first half, Hoddle scoring just on half time, and then early in the second, and thinking we were coasting, and then we just stopped playing. Then Leicester came back to 3-3, and then they stopped playing. And then we got the most dodgy penalty I've ever seen.
and Zippy did the business for us.
I couldn't watch it. I honestly couldn't watch the penalty. And then it just smashed it straight down the middle. And it was the noise that got me. But I literally, even at that stage, I just couldn't watch that penalty.
I think, I'll tell you what, Chris, I remember, I've told this story before. There was a little kid in this weird little sort of t-shirt and shorts, Action Man t-shirt and shorts. I just remember that vividly. I was 15, I think at the time, 15, 16. And this kid looked hopelessly lost. Like he was wandering around trying to find his parents or so it appeared to me. And we were like one row back. We were right behind the goal. And I just remember saying to this kid, I scooped this kid up and I pointed to the pitch, literally as Bowden's spotting the ball up. And I just pointed and said, "Don't forget this moment. Like, look at this moment. Don't ever forget this moment. You'll never forget this moment." And the kid just stood there transfixed. Paul Bowden at the back of the net. I never saw the kid ever again. Now, I don't know whether I launched the kid or what, but
imagine he skied it and we lost.
Oh, could you imagine? Yeah, he would have been absolutely hating me for the rest of his life. But I do remember that from Bowden. But I tell you, the strange thing about '93 for me, having sort of scaled the heights of emotion in 1989, I didn't. It wasn't the same replication of emotion in 1993. It was a sense of justice had been achieved, like job done, as opposed to the kind of raw emotion of we've done it.
Yeah,
And
I think the thing in 1990 as well. You've also got the thing hanging at the back of your mind at what happened after it.
Yeah, exactly. So much damage was done, I think, psychologically, Chris. And I think in many ways, we've touched on it today, haven't we? Like in so many touch points on this show, that I think so much of our kind of you can actually link back to the damage done that day to the overall psyche of the football club. And I think that actually is a conversation I've had with our owner. You know, I don't think you can have a club relegated 2 divisions after being promoted to the top flight and then restore the division. But I don't think you can have that level of trauma and not have some form of collective PTSD amongst the supporter base. And I think it manifests itself in a glass jaw. You know, like when we're flying and when the county ground's rocking, there's no other place I'd rather be. But actually, like watching a calm box, it's a pretty glass-jawed experience when things aren't great. Chris has tweeted, though, just to sort of jump in while you're doing your free, Chris. Chris has said Danny Invincible's winner against Peterborough to keep us up in 2000 is somewhere right up there. He also talks about Charlie Henry's playoff goal. Yeah, what a rocket. We're going to come back to that, Chris. And at home against Gillingham. Charlie Henry's playoff goal at home against the Gills is also right up there. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Chris. Coming back to you, though, Chris. So that was Wembley 93.
My third one, and I think it's more the whole thing of what happened after it, was away at Blackpool in '96. Now, I don't know whether the best thing about that was getting promotion or the fact that I was rooming with Andrew Hawes.
A young Andrew Hawes, dish the dirt. Did he snore?
No, but that whole weekend was I think it was I was with the London Reds at the time, and because they pulled me in because I was going to some games on my own, so they sort of like put a shoulder around me and took me in as one of their own, and so there was a massive group of us there, and just the whole weekend was just amazing. There was 5 or 6 people who didn't have a ticket, who were just like literally stood outside the stadium waiting for the end, and Kevin Horlock put us ahead, and it was an absolute screamer, like most of them were from him that season. Yeah. And Blackpool then equalised, but we got the point we needed, and it just made the weekend. It was just such a fantastic weekend, and it's just a memory because of, you know, we don't get promoted all that often, really, do we?
Yeah, it was that was my first year at university, so you can imagine where my head was at. But the beaches were pretty spectacular, Chris, weren't they?
Oh, they were. But it was between that and actually not all that long later, away at Chesterfield, when we actually clinched the title.
Oh, wonderful memories. And there's another era. We talk about collective PTSD. Another era into it is because, again, when it was good under McMahon, Chris, it was brilliant, wasn't it? But when the money dried up, it went sour very quickly, and it got really, really bad.
Oh, it did. But that season, probably that 95-96 season, was probably, I know a lot of people say the Canio they loved, but that was probably my favourite season as a Swindon fan, was 95-96.
I can still, Chris, I can still sit here now and talk about that team. I can tell you about, decent goalkeepers in Digby and Talia, 2 decent centre halves in Seagraves and Sean Taylor. You could talk about the midfield, real technicians in that midfield as well, the likes of Kevin Watson, who was really decent. I mean, we had great little players.
Wayne Allison was such a focal point in that team.
I mean, yeah, what a player. I mean, Wayne Allison, Wayne Allison, Peter Thorne, Steve Finney, and you had, you still had Paul Bowden, you had Mark Robinson, and
earlier in the season as well, we had Shay Given.
Yeah, we certainly did, and rarely conceded a goal, and he still speaks really highly of Swindon Town as well, and what a career he went on to have. All right, well, look, Chris, cheers for those. We've got another Chris that's tweeted. So Chris has tweeted in to say, Leeds away under Angus King in 2003, 2004. The draw with Paul Robinson equalising. Oh, God almighty. We absolutely played him off the park that night. Chris, were you at the game?
I was at that, and because it's just down road from me. So, when Robinson equalised, I was literally just stood with my head in my hands.
So, to the younger audience that may not be au fait with that game, Leeds had just started to go down the toilet, Chris, hadn't they? Like things were, there. It's fair to say that they were starting to become a bit of a spent force, having been utterly tremendous and challenging for the Champions League and so on and so forth.
But yeah, we had the game in the bag, and then we somehow just managed to let it slip away.
Yeah, we did. And obviously their equalising goal was scored by none other than England goalkeeper, England's number one at the time, Paul Robinson, that came up for the corner and did what Alisson did a couple of seasons back. Scored with a salmon-like leap. Just could not believe it past Reece. But that was a really, really good side, wasn't it? And it's fair to say Andy King actually created miracles, didn't he, Chris, that season, putting that team together?
Oh, it was another great season as well. Seeing as we're talking like this, reminiscing, it's been a long time since we've had a run of seasons sort of like that.
Yeah, it's very true.
It's just like, we'll have one good one like last year, and then we've kind of lost the aura of what we all built up last year. It seems to just it's not there this season. It's just like we haven't got that year to year.
In the same season, Chris, you'll remember Chris's second selection, Chris Kay's second selection, Port Vale away, 3-0 down, and we come back to draw 3-3. Yeah, that was pretty special. Now, how about this for a glutton punishment? So Chris's third choice, he said it Brighton away in the playoffs. So there was a lot of fun had in Brighton that day for sure. But we would have gone the cliche, Chris. We would have gone on Smash City at Wembley.
I remember that was I actually can remember that game like it was last week. It doesn't seem that it's 16 years ago.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's a sure sign that you and I are getting. That's a sure sign you and I are getting too old, mate. We're old as fast. John's talking to say. I was 6:06 that night after Leeds a game after coming out of Ellen Road, and Bart was red inside. Okay. Steve's tweet to say we all hate Leeds. We all hate Leeds. We certainly did that night. Gabs has tweeted to say that his three selections are number one for him, Sheffield United playoffs away. Both legs. In fact, he's saying, that really was quite something, to a point where Sky still on a regular show that unbelievable second leg at the county ground, where it was literally up for grabs at the end. It looked like we'd just given up because we thought we'd won 10 minutes to go, or 5 minutes to go, should we say, after a Beaker scored. And then it just seemed like hang on a minute, they just threw everyone forward, and their firepower, Shay Adams up front, it all nearly went so horribly, horribly wrong, but we hung on. Unfortunately, it wasn't to be at Wembley. Gabs' second choice, we've mentioned it already tonight, Port Vale 5. Swindon Town 5, Port Vale 0 to seal the championship at the county ground. Yeah, that was a very, very special day. Absolutely tremendous. And Northampton away, we've already talked about that as well, Gabs, like Jordan Lyden's header from an Owen Doyle cross.
No, Gabs was talking about DiCanio. I think that was the time when he ran on the pitch at the end. Different game.
No, sorry. Yeah, you're right. Of course. Northampton away, DiCanio. What am I thinking? Of course. Alan McCormack, late winner, and DiCanio off down the pitch being pursued by Rafael De Vita. What a night that was. We do well, though, don't we, Joe? Away at Northampton. We do ever so well.
We do, yeah. I think, to be honest, Gabs is a bastard there, because that was my third one. I was going to pick my third one for Northampton away under DiCanio. I don't remember us ever losing away at Northampton. Even when Coventry played there.
I went there to the game this season with that goal from Lavigne. I can just still literally see it. If the net wasn't there, it would have smacked me smack between the eyes.
What an absolute peach. It's going to be goal, that, isn't it? It's going to be between that or Jake Wakelin, I think. They're going to have to go something to beat him.
Yeah, it's Marcel all the way. But yeah, back to my point. Like, Northampton away, Sixfields is just such a happy hunting ground for us. Like, no matter how Swindon Town are doing or Northampton Town are doing in a season, away at Sixfields, we're going to win. It's the opposite to how I feel about going away at Colchester. Like, Colchester can be shit and we'll be amazing. We'll still lose. It's the way it is. It's the law. I'm sure of it. But yeah, Gabs, cheers for that. You've nicked my one.
Well, Tim of the Town has tweeted, he's just sent one and one selection only. And what a mighty selection, Tim, you have made. He says, Glenn Hoddle's Scorcher versus Sunderland on the opening day of the 1992-93 season. I regularly post the video because for me, it is as close to football poetry as it possibly can be. I mean, look, all I can say is that I grew up in southeast London. My family had close links to Tottenham Hotspur, not like familial links or anything in terms of knowing anyone at the club, just long-standing sort of supporter links. And it was Glenn Hoddle and Chris Waddle that drew me into following football in the first place, just because, you know, Tottenham had these. For a start, there was something about the name Hotspur that was quite alluring. And then they had these two players called Glenn Hoddle and Chris Waddle. And as a very, very young sort of 9-10-year-old kid, you know, it was something about that was like really, really quite, there was a certain mystique about it. So fast forward many years down the line, and Glenn Hoddle gets appointed as player manager of Swindon Town. And obviously it already made a notable start, saved us from relegation, got us there or thereabouts in his second season. And then his third full season opens up in a way that Glenn Hoddle could have possibly opened up, where he collects the ball approximately 30 yards out. He's calling players towards him. He's signalling for people to open up. Then he feints to his right, pulls the ball out onto his left peg and unleashes an absolute exocet into the very, very top right-hand corner, what we would now lovingly call top bins.
The only criticism...
I tweeted Chris earlier in the week, didn't he, to say that he was in perfect line when the ball left Hoddle's foot and he knew it was going. He literally tracked it all the way. So go on, mate.
I was going to say, the only criticism I've got of that goal is that it was at the wrong end.
Oh, yeah, very true. Can you imagine if that had been at the Town end? It would have been absolute dog.
And that was off his wrong foot as well.
Yeah, his left peg. Although Glenn Hoddle will tell you that, you know, he didn't have a weak foot, left foot, right foot. And that was the thing about that Swindon Town team in 92-93. There was the likes of him, two-footed, John Moncur, two-footed, Mickey Allen, two-footed, Martin Ling, Ross McLaren. All of these players could go left or right. And it was key to the system that we played as well.
Yeah, the midfield we had that season. And to think you could throw like Horlock, who was sort of just coming up there, and was almost that season was... well, he was really sort of Bowden's understudy. It was only a couple of years later when he really broke on. But he became a fantastic two-foot midfielder as well.
Oh, he's so good. Yeah, I mean, who would have thought it? Yeah, as you say, a bit part left-back, goes on to become the player that Kevin Horlock became. But, yeah, what a tremendous player he was. So, Alan Jones's selection. So, we've already had a couple of these. In fact, we've had all three, but we're just going to give them a loving mention again. So, Alan goes his number one selection, Birmingham 4, Swindon Town 6. Second selection was Swindon Town 2, Peterborough 1, and Danny Invincible saving us from relegation at the depth. Yeah, what a moment that was. And then Charlton 2, Swindon Town 1 in the playoff semi-final, with obviously Town going through on penalties. Like, absolutely tremendous. Proud to be a Moonraker has tweeted his selection. His first one, well, this is certainly one for the purists, the Swindon Town purists, those that there is a certain West Country derby where there are just two sets of people that just don't like each other. And those are Bristolians and Swindonians. And Proud to be a Moonraker says, good evening, Martin, by the way. He says, Bristol City 0, Swindon Town 4 at Ashton Gate. The most complete away performance that anyone could wish to see. Chris, did you get to that? I'm going to take that as a no. The thing that I found really...
I had my mic on, so no, I wasn't at that one.
No trouble at all. I remember being really young at the time and buying a highlights VHS cassette. How about that? A highlights VHS cassette of that particular game. And we were tremendous. I think Chalky got a couple in that game. Steve White got a couple in that game.
Maybe he got two, and Duncan Shearer might have got two.
I think you're right.
Shearer definitely scored one of them.
Yeah. He's second, so Martin's second selection.
I think actually Shearer and Steve Foley.
Hey, there you go. So Martin's second selection is Swindon Town 4, Chester 2. Swindon Town earning promotion in front of a packed house. Now, this is key. In front of a packed house 2 weeks after the railway works shut for good. So the Swindon works shut for good. Said the town really needed that. And it's a conversation I've had recently with people behind the scenes at Swindon. So you know, those of you regular listeners of the show will know that I am a former Kent police officer, and Medway as a town suffers real kind of socio-economic problems from the closing of its dockyards and its naval dockyards all moving down to Portsmouth. For me, I think there's a certain thing that Martin taps into there about Swindon, you know, essentially the Swindon sort of railway works closing as well. I mean, not being a Swindonian, but having lots of Swindonian family living there at the time. Growing up in and around proud Swindonians, they always spoke with just such immense pride about the railway works and the fact that we were the kind of centre of the British railway network and all of this jazz. And then to suddenly no longer have that in a town like Swindon, which is pretty much that is its sort of central industry, is going to lead to socio-economic problems similar to those that I encountered pretty much on an average working day. And you know, inevitably, when you lose that and you lose that pride, you lose jobs. You know, it results in poverty and thereafter all kinds of kind of problems sweep in. But Martin looks on the positive side, and Swindon 2, Chester. So it's Swindon 4, Chester 2, meaning that we got promotion in front of a packed house at the county ground, was the fillip that the town absolutely needed at the time. And then he lovingly salutes in his third selection Charlie Henry's Rocket, which still, sorry, Andrew Hawes, the greatest piece of Swindon Town commentary I've ever heard was from Vic Morgan that night. And I can still hear the words in my head. Charlie Henry, the town substitute, equalises when he's unleashed an absolute rocket into the top corner. And again, the fact was the playoff tie was dead and buried. It looked like it had gone up. But you literally are talking the last kick of the game that led to a replay, and the replay had to be on neutral ground at Sellers Park and the referee. Steve White, eat your heart out.
Yeah, I think I was about 11 or 12 that season for that game.
Yeah, truly wonderful. I mean, those are literally my embryo. That is the genesis moment for me following our football club.
I think it was my first season was the 85-86. So that would have, well, I went to a couple of games the season before, but it was 85-86 when I really got into it. And then
the golden era.
Season after.
Yeah, the golden era, Chris. Golden era. Lucky we were. And if we do what we know now, how much more would we have made in that period, eh? We've got Fat D's 1, 2, 3s. Oh, what a selection these are. So Fat D's first selection, we'll go in 1, 2, 3 order. The first selection, top of the tree. Tranmere away in the playoffs, 1993. We lost on the night, but we went through on aggregate. I mean, the drama of that night is perfectly encapsulated in the That's Football documentary recorded, where that season was tracked by a documentary filmmaker, and the cameras were literally on the touchline that night and in amongst the dugout, and you are so close to the drama. So if you haven't seen that documentary, get on YouTube and watch it, and you'll see some tremendous players, some tremendous drama. I think the club secretary at the time couldn't leave the changing room, so they also had a camera in the changing room with him as the game was unfolding. That's pretty special. Fat D's second game is Birmingham 4, Swindon Town 6. There it is again. Again, for those of the younger generation that haven't seen the highlights, go back and watch it. It's well worth watching. And his third selection, oh, what a peach. Sheffield United away, 1993-94. First game in the Premiership. Chris, I know that you were there.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to remember. But, it was... I was trying to think. Was it 2-1, 3-1?
2-1. John Moncur.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. I was thinking. I couldn't remember if it was that or the game after that Moncur had scored. It was a quickly taken free kick, wasn't it?
That's it. Yeah, the very same. So Danny Dill, another selection here for the historians. So Danny Dill's 1, 2, 3. The first one is Don Rogers rounding Bob Wilson in 1969. I mean, what a moment. What an absolute moment. I can imagine if you were watching that on the telly or watching it in the stadium, it would have looked absolutely tremendous, whichever way you were going with it. Second selection is from 1993 at Wembley, and it's Sean Taylor scoring his diving header at Wembley. And again, what a wonderful piece of commentary, goes roughly along the lines of, and Taylor has scored. And that surely means it's the Premier League for Swindon Town now. I should have those words tattooed somewhere personal on my body. What a moment that was. And then he salutes number 3. We talked about it earlier, by mistake. Alan McCormack's late winner versus Northampton. Who was at that game? Joe, were you at that game? Northampton, Alan McCormack's late winner, New Year's Eve.
I think I was, yeah. So the one where DiCanio's run on the pitch.
Yeah, he's gone on the pitch, chased down the pitch by Rafael De Vita, and got himself a red card for his sins.
Yeah, I mean, Sam DiCanio. Yeah, I was at that game. That was my third. I mean, I realised I've not actually sent my list over to you, but that was my third one on my list. Yeah, unreal game. I think that entire 90 minutes just kind of, in a nutshell, that was the season in one match. It was just chaotic to start with, pure brilliance to end with, and just, a sucker punch and a piece of quality to win a game. And that was that squad in that season in one single fixture, really.
Yeah, kept going. It just kept going till the end. Supremely fit side.
That was it. Yeah, Fitness won games, and Fitness won the league title that year.
Oh, they were absolutely obscene. I mean, obviously, it's been immortalised now, that picture of Paolo being chased by Rafael De Vita, like so many ways, whether that's pin badges, whether that's tremendous photography. But that was some night. I got absolutely spangled that night. I don't mind telling. Martin's tweeted one brilliant. Oh, this is tremendous. How about this? What a game this was, by the way. Stoke away in the League Cup under Di Canio, the last-minute winner. So I start. He said,
was it James Collin hat-trick that night? Was it?
That's the one. That's the one. He said, a last-minute winner, and I start to fall into the row in front. He says, my dad grabs me. I think he's saving me from falling. He shouts at me to look at the scoreboard. I see 120 minutes. He then lets go and carries on celebrating. I continue to fall. Good night, that. What a night that was. I seem to... wasn't that night? I seem to remember Paolo connecting with James Collins' backside at the end of the game when he tried to take the match ball. He wasn't having it.
Typically, Martin, though, hasn't read the full remit, and there's only sent 1 in and not 3.
And we're closing our moments with this. So Andy Footner, brilliant selection. How about this for a selection? Andy, thank you so much for sending these in. He says, I'll do these in reverse order. So he said, obviously, 4-3 versus Leicester at Wembley. I mean, we've talked about that, and what a tremendous game. His second selection, how about this? 5-0 FA Cup victory over Fulham. Their team had George Best, Bobby Moore, and Rodney Marsh in it, and Swindon beat them 5-0. I mean, wow. Can you imagine that? A Swindon team beating arguably, or turning over a side of 3, well, certainly 2, if not 3, of the greatest generational talents of that period. But George Best and Bobby Moore, World Cup winner, and arguably the closest the British Isles has got to producing Lionel Messi in George Best. Unbelievable. And Andy's final selection was 4-3 victory over Arsenal in the League Cup replay. Before my time, Andy, but I can only imagine 4-3 victory over a sublimely talented Arsenal team with a who's who of people that went on to become Sky pundits during the formation years of the Barclays Premier League. Like, incredible, absolutely incredible. I mean, guys, I don't know about you, but what a selection of 1, 2, 3s. I mean, we're getting them. They're still rolling in as we're tweeting. I mean,
Hannah's, I've not given my one yet. What's happening?
Oh, go on.
I mean, I was going to go. My third one was the one that Gabs has sent in, so I'll leave that to Gabs. I've replaced that one. I think my third favourite game was the 2010 season, Norwich at home. Gordon Greer last-minute equaliser. I think that the atmosphere was amazing for that game. Obviously, Norwich had sold out the Stratton Bank. Norwich were flying high, and that goal probably secured our sort of our playoff place. Really, we had a bit of a slump, didn't we, before the end of the season? and that felt like a really important goal. So yeah, Gordon Greer against Norwich, third favourite. I think my second favourite is Leeds at home, same season. So that was my first ever home game at the county ground. Which, I mean, was an absolute battering, and I think it probably set me up under false pretenses as being a Swindon fan, thinking that I'd get that every week. The Charlie Austin factor, he scored the first goal I ever saw at the county ground. He was the name and number on the back of my first shirt. That also added to the Gillingham game this year. Sorry, the Grimsby game, not Gillingham, but the Grimsby game of Charlie coming back and scoring. It felt full circle for me. So that Leeds game at home was just sensational. But that would be my first, in the list. But I'm not just saying this because we're called the Tom Broadbent Lounge. But my favourite ever game is watching on iFollow Swindon 2, Oxford 1. Now, I mean, it has different factors to me, different layers. I think, obviously, I've watched us play Oxford countless times, and it's been shit. Just Oxford fans. I've got a mate as well that's an Oxford fan, and that's borderline non-friendship terms from the start, really.
Get new mates.
Yeah. To be fair, he's my girlfriend's university mate more, so it's her fault. But yeah, no, it's been tough. Our historic games against Oxford, but that game, in the way that it came across, losing the game and having a fairly shit season, to win in the way we did was unbelievable. But I think that was one of the last days that I actually saw my nan alive. So my nan had terminal cancer at the time. I was watching the game on iFollow round their house, my nan and granddad's house. And yeah, she was sat watching it with us, really quite unwell. And it was a really beautiful moment, standing up and shouting and getting really excited, and just looking at her sat in her chair smiling and getting really quite excited about Swindon beating Oxford. And yeah, so I'm getting a bit choked up here.
No, mate. Do you know what, Joe? Someone asked me, like, of all the things we could have called our show, why did we call it the Tom Broadbent Lounge? And I had this conversation with Broady as well. So Tom himself asked me that question. He said, "You've got all these like brilliant moments. Think how many moments we've touched on tonight. Some of the great players, some of the great names, the Glenn Hoddles, the Lou Macaris, Paolo Di Canios, goal scorers, people that scored great goals, Don Rogers, Alan McCormack, Sean Taylor. We've got so many wonderful." And Tom's like, "Why did you name it after me?" And I was like, if ever there was a game that just typified following Swindon Town, then that was it. I said, if you want to, on a very, very basic level, we have gone 1-0 down against our nearest rivals. And the game, we've got arguably our worst manager in the history that I've had. Paul Hart aficionados will argue, but we had someone like Sheridan in the dugout. All the odds were stacked against us, and then a player gets sent on, thrown up front, played out of position, essentially scores 2 goals. We go and win at their place. Irony of ironies, there's no fans in the bloody ground to enjoy it. It could not be more Swindon Town if it tried. So,
honestly, I think the biggest thing for me, like, the win was unbelievable. Like, just sensational feeling to win a derby and stuff. But that was, I think my nan died 2 days later, and that moment she was sat in her chair and she was really, really ill and just not with it and not okay, no energy. She stood up to celebrate. I don't know how she did it because she couldn't stand up.
That's magnificent, Joe. And
it's,
I'll tell you what, really special, Joe. I'll tell you what else is really, really special. I mean, thank you for sharing that, mate. That's incredibly, incredibly special. That team, if you look at that team, you had like Paul Caddis, Anthony Grant, you still had like proper cult heroes in that team, like putting in a shift. And and it was just that season should not have gone that way. Like, it had no right to go that way and go so horribly wrong. But again, talking about your moment there with your nan, Joe, I mean, we talked before about what, right at the start of the show, about moments and how, listen, there were Man United fans talking about having faced hardship at the weekend because they haven't won a trophy since 2017. It's like, right, come walk a mile in my shoes, boys. But, listen, I think that we go back to, what it is to be a Swindon fan and what it means to be a Swindon fan. It's about moments. It's about community. It's about, all those wonderful things that we don't get spoiled by success, do we? We've not been spoiled by success. We've been spoiled in other ways. We've been spoiled by the type of manager that maybe we've employed over the years. And I think it's one of the reasons why Jody Morris's appointment has been so warmly received, because he very much fits a manager that's been appointed that kind of is the Swindon way, isn't it? It is Macari, it is Hoddle, it is Di Canio, it is Richie Wellens. It's got that kind of allure. It's the Dennis Wise type thing. While we've been talking, listen, we'll add a few more of these because they're so good. I don't want to turn these down. So John's tweeted to say Sam Parkin at Chesterfield was a special moment after we sort of wrote him off as a fan base because he wasn't a name. Yeah, I mean, blimey. If we knew then what we knew now, John, about what Sam Parkin would go on to achieve in a red shirt, like, God, what a player. What a player. Steve's tweeted his top three. And this is lovely. I'm just going to talk about his first one. He said his 1990 playoff. I was unemployed at the time. Just literally, this is exactly what I've just been saying. Steve said I was unemployed at the time and my friends from the Uffington bought me a ticket and a train ticket. It was special because that was my first ever trip to Wembley. I mean, like, really special. Funny enough, his second trip, he's number two. Again, he travelled with his friends from Uffington, and he's talking about Craig Maskell's goal at Wembley, the thud off the post. Obviously, we've not talked about it, but it's folklore, isn't it? You think about moments. I mean, that game was absolutely incredible, but every single one of us in our heads can recall what that sound is like, that ball hitting the post. Truly wonderful. Luke's tweeted. Hello, Luke. Good evening to you. Luke says, amazing moment was last home game of 2006-2007 under Paul Sturrock. Capacity, county ground, and perfect weather. We got the point we needed to go up in third position, and Walsall went up as champions. Everyone went home happy. Yeah, I mean, that was incredible, Luke. I remember that game really well because I was wearing the shirt from the Steve McMahon Championship year, the round neck that some loved, some hated with the embroidery on it. I just remember that vividly because it was quite a random shirt to wear back then when not a lot of us really wore retro shirts. And yeah, I remember that was crazy because you had two sets of fans on the pitch celebrating, but there was no trouble whatsoever because, as you say, we all got exactly what it was we were hoping we would get. Tremendous. Listen, we've got to draw a line under this at some point because we can just keep going, but we've got so many more that I could read out. I'm really, really sorry if we're not getting around to all of these tweets, but I'm pleased that this content's having that sort of impact that you're all feeling like you want to join in and share your moments with us. Again, it's about those moments, isn't it? It's following Swindon Town. It's about special moments. And I don't want to get too sort of like preachy about it, but you just sort of think to yourself like, listen, there's so much that's going on in our club at the moment that I think we should be positive about as opposed to being negative. I mean, I like to think I'm quite glass half full. One of the reasons why I'm a bit like that at Swindon Town is that I wish I could have my time again so I could make more of the 89-90 season and the 1993 season and the 1996 season and to an extent 2010 and then 2012 under Di Canio. If I knew what I knew now, I'd made so much more of it. And I reflect on what Rob and Greg were saying earlier about Clem and my own experiences at Clem. And it's not been, there's been things that have happened that are wholly unsavoury and not happy, if you're a fan of a certain persuasion. But it's really easy to go off the deep end. But, try and enjoy what we've got this year because that Joe Tomlinson moment was so super, super special last weekend. And the celebration meant everything, meant absolutely everything. And then, of course, Charlie against Grimsby and then Charlie against Gillingham. Like, oh, my word. Don't allow ourselves to get ahead of ourselves or to be entitled enough to just sort of, write the entire season off as a bad experience because it's moments moments, dear listener, that makes following Swindon Town such a special thing. But listen, we're going to wrap up with a Joe. We've got the last sort of like 10, 12 minutes of the show. Leyton Orient. It's almost like an old boys reunion, isn't it? I counted five ex-players and staff that we're going to be rubbing shoulders with at the weekend. Do you make me right?
Yeah, I think, to be fair, the Leyton Orient preview, I've put my hand up for this one this week because it's probably the easiest of the season. You know, let's face it, it's going to be a bloody tough game. We're coming up against a gaffer that I think a lot of Swindon Town fans will have a lot of strong feelings for. Certainly, if you were to offer him back to me right now, I don't care who the manager is at Swindon Town, I'd have him back. He's even above DiCanio. I think easily he's the most endearing manager we've ever had. Mixing in with success, and results, personality. It's just everything was there for Richie at Swindon, and I don't think you'll find many people at the club that will say a bad word about the guy. He's a Swindon Town legend. Anyone that manages the football club's promotion is that in my eyes. So on the first front, manager, shit. Goalkeeper, Lawrence Vigouroux. Maybe not a legend at Swindon Town. I'd probably say cult hero. Would you accept that for Lawrence Vigouroux?
Yeah, I would say he certainly had a cult following. I think there were certain things that he did that you could interpret disrespectful, not just to his manager, but to the club as a whole, like the way that he paid fines and things like that. I mean,
he was very young. I think he grew up.
He was very immature, wasn't he, when he was at Swindon Town? And the guy's done a lot of growing up during his time at Orient.
The big thing was he had kids in the last, I think the relegation season with Luke Williams. He had kids, and I think he said he's said on paper that was the turning point for him. And generally, I think he's been quite above board and level-headed since then. Still loves giving it to the away fans wherever he is. It's a part of his game, and I think he thrives off of it. But
although interestingly, Joe, every time we've played, he's been unbelievably respectful. I think he just gets us.
Do you know what? He genuinely loves us. I don't think he's ever felt a warmth of fan base. Even the Orient fans, like, I've seen Orient a couple of times with him in goal. They don't sing his name. I'm pretty sure when we played him earlier in the season, I'm fairly sure the town end was singing the Vigouroux song when he came out for the second half, which was, that's for an away fan going to the town end, bloody hell. Like, to get your name sung in a positive way, you must have done something good. Lawrence Vigouroux, he's a cult hero at Swindon. Absolutely love the bloke. Let's move into the defence, shall we? You got Rob Hunt. All right, here we go again.
Mate, I'm crying already. Rob Hunt, what a man.
Look, it's pissing me off, Hannah's. We're going through a team of players that I really love. All right, Rob Hunt, another cult hero, right? Like, the Mr. 7 out of 10. He was immense for us in the promotion season. He was fantastic. He was captain material. One of the only good players in the League One season as well. Consistently played. He came in at centre back and played centre back for us that season as well. When he left after last season, it felt a bit like a kick in the bollocks, because it was one of the ones, him and Jack Payne, we were like, right, let's get this over the line. Let's get them done. And it just ekes out. And he was playing for Crawley in pre-season. You're thinking, right, okay, what's he doing there? Is it a payday? Then fair enough. Take it on the chin. And he's gone to Leyton Orient. Probably in his eyes, it's a good move, the way it's panned out. But again, it hurt. Then you move into midfield, you've got Jordan Lydon. And it's like, okay, right, shit, that's another one. Like, influential in the promotion win season. Had a really good season, or starts the season in League One, got injured again. Obviously, we know he struggles with injuries. Last season, when he played, he was fantastic. Against Man City, I thought he was really, really composed. He held his own as a footballer. We've said many times last season on the show that when fit, Jordan Lydon's probably the best number 8 in League Two. Maybe up there with the best number 8s in League One as well, if we're honest. It's just the staying fit part. And I really, really hope that wherever he goes and wherever he stays, if he stays at Orient or he goes elsewhere, he does stay fit and he has a good career because he's got the talent to do so. But yeah, that's another one that I want to hate Orient, but I can't because he's another lad that's done a lot for Swindon Town, and we've got a lot of respect for him. So who is that? Is that 4? I think the one more you were thinking of Harry Smith.
No, I wasn't thinking. No, to be honest, what did I have? I had Richie Wellens,
yeah,
Hunt, Lawrence Vigouroux,
yeah,
Jordan Lydon,
yeah,
and who else did I have? Is it one of the coaching staff? He's not got Noel Hunt with him, has he?
No, I think he hasn't got Noel Hunt. I'm not too sure who. I don't think his coaching staff are ex-Swindon because you've got obviously Tommy Wright. I don't think can coach anymore. I think Noel Hunt's working in academy football. Yeah, I think that's it. Because obviously you had Harry Smith, but he's on loan at Barnet now, so he's out the door.
Yeah, so former Loney caused us all manner of problems at their place last season. Who's the other lad as well? Blimey, his name completely escapes my mind. The winger who was hopeless for us and then went and actually...
Brophy.
Yes, thank you, Brophy.
I don't think he's there anymore. I'm not sure he's there.
I'm pretty sure he's not, but he's another one that ended up being a favourite at their place. So we've always had... I mean, it's interesting because we've always had interesting links with Leyton Orient in terms of players. Well, certainly like in recent years. Yeah, Brophy went off to Cambridge, if I recall. I think it was Cambridge what he's gone off to. So what's... I mean, obviously, so Stephen, looking at the league table, Stevenage have here. I mean, they were. It was a bit like watching Apollo Creed and Rocky going at it blow for blow. But they were. It's fair to say going at it sort of. They were pretty much level pegging. But now Stevenage have hit this terrible run of form, where I think they've won their last game, but then prior to that, they'd lost 3 and drawn 2. So they've dropped back 60 points, but they got 2 games in hand. But Orient have just pretty much kept going, haven't they? They've drawn their last game, but then they've won 4 of their last 5. They're
just formidable. I think other than the Swindon links, which is it's a very strong Swindon links to this Orient team, they're a very, very good football team. And I think
just to put this into perspective, though, mate, they've only scored 2 more goals than we have all season. The difference is that we've conceded 14 more than they have. So, in terms of them sort of, essentially tucking away their chances, they're pretty bloody clinical. They're putting teams to bed in a way that clearly we're not.
They've got someone in number 10 that's, he's a championship level midfielder in George Moncur.
Yeah.
In League Two, that's an absolute cheat code.
Mm. Yeah, they're a. I mean, earlier in the season, obviously we took a point off them at the county ground, where for the vast majority of the game we were down to 10 men after the sending off for Harry McCurdy. Somewhat inevitable.
No, that wasn't. That was Salford. You're thinking of?
Oh, of course it was Salford.
It was 11v11. I think obviously we took the lead early on through Harry.
Hold on.
We probably were quite lucky to get a point out of that game.
Yeah, blimey, it seems so long ago now. This season, I don't know whether it's the season dragging or what, but
I think we scored after about 2 minutes, and they equalised about 2 minutes later, and then they went on to miss about 4 or 5 sitters. And Brent, outstanding.
We did get battered. We got battered.
Yeah, no, you bang on. Didn't Jake Wakelin set up McCurdy for the opener? And it was
he did. Yeah, just rolled it across. It was a tap in.
That's right. The game's properly back in my head now. So I seem to remember it was McCurdy scored, and I remember thinking this is way too early that we scored against them. But equally, even then, I wasn't expecting them to score as quick as they did. And then, it was one of those weird games, wasn't it? Where you had the best part of 85 minutes of 2 teams going at it and us just really hanging on. But nonetheless, we still took a point off them, didn't we? Unusual for us back then as well. I mean, I've just pulled up the stats for the game. We only had 45% possession at home. despite the fact that we are obviously the possession team. And Orient that day had 19 shots, 10 on target. We only managed 7. So, yeah, we really were against the ropes in that game, weren't we? And funny enough, that day, Leyton Orient went top of the table for the first time, and they stayed top of the table pretty much for the rest of the season thus far.
It smacks of the 1920 season under Wellens at Town. The way they've got about it this year, it's kind of uncanny.
Yeah. I'll make you right. But I mean, like we said, they're pretty much starting to pull away now, aren't they? They're relentless, and you're starting to get the impression that teams that are playing against them, it's got, like you said, it's got that inevitability that almost like our games had, Joe, if you know what I mean. We were going to games kind of going, we're expecting to win today. And it was like if you could land a glove on the opposition, like, first, then it's like the opposition almost going, right, okay, damage limitation now. It's kind of got that feel about it. But so who are the big threats then? So we've got George Moncur, Joe, to look out for. So George Moncur's interesting. He's got 6 goals, 2 assists in 33 games. So this is the thing, like they haven't got like absolute rip roaring pull away stars. They've got George Moncur, 6 goals, 2 assists, 33 games. So a goal every 0.25. Goals per 90 minutes, 0.25. So minutes per goal, 359 minutes per goal for George Moncur. Interestingly, he's had 41 total shots in 33 games. So for a midfielder, 41 shots in 33 games. His goal conversion rate is 15%. And his shot accuracy is 50%. So 20 and a half of his shots, or let's say 21 of his shots, have hit the target. It's pretty impressive stats, isn't it, for a midfielder?
It is, yeah. I think the biggest thing about looking at Orient's goal scoring stats is, it's kind of mental. They haven't got one player in double figures this season. They've spread out their goals across the entirety of their squad, which is, to be fair, like, it's probably the best way to go about it. You're not relying on one player to score your goals. You're sharing responsibilities. So you've got Paul Smith, first top of the top scorer charts with 9 goals, and then you've just got an absolute it's just a melee of players on 5, 4, 3 goals. You've got Moncur, Archibald, Kelman, Sotriu, Elmazzoni, James. And you've got Drinnan, Beckles, Turns, Pratley, just all chipping in with goals and assists. And I think that's something that we probably saw. I know we said about Doyle scoring goals and goals and goals, but every game you'd have someone like a Danny Rose chipping in with a goal under Wellens, or a Woolery, or an Anderson, or Isgroves with a couple of goals a season. Like, it was such fluid football that you were expecting anyone on that pitch to get a winner.
Yeah, you're right. I'll tell you what's interesting, Joe. If you look at our lineup and how many shots that our team takes in comparison to them, we're nowhere near it.
No.
So, just to give you a flavour, our equivalent, if you will, of George Moncur, Johnny Williams, has had 24 shots, as opposed to, obviously, Moncur is well up in the 40s. So he's had 20 more shots, I think. And then you go to Jacob Wakeling, who's a striker, so you expected him to get a few off, and he's on 45. But then you've got Luke Jeffcott on 23, Charlie Austin. He's already, to be fair, Charlie's already got 14 in 4, so Charlie will be there or thereabouts. Ronan Darcy in midfield, 30, and then Tyree Shade, 19, and it really starts. You've got a long tail, 10 here, 11 here, 10 here, etc., etc. But listen, it's. Yeah, they clearly get themselves into a lot of attacking positions, get a lot of shots off. It's going to be a busy day for Sol Bryn, isn't it?
Yeah, you feel like, especially with the defence issues we've got at the minute, I know the rumours are that we may be looking at an Adrian Mariappa coming in. The defence is injury stricken, and we're going to need Sol to perform usual Sol Bryn antics for us to have any chance. You feel like you've got to, at least, if we're going to get a point out of this game, we need to limit Orient to scoring maybe 1 goal at max. It's going to be likely, let's face it, a counter-attacking game of football. At which point do you drop Charlie Austin for this game?
Oh,
I don't know. Do we
No, you
go
don't
full pace at the
drop.
top?
We're not going to drop our captain, mate. No
Oh,
chance.
no. I'm not saying we will, but I'm saying if you do go two up top, do you go, Wakelin and Hepburn Murphy and try and absolutely counter attack with pace? Because I think that's the game we're going to have to play at the weekend.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think you take Charlie out of our current lineup, I immediately start having kittens, because you've got nobody on that pitch that has kind of been there, done it. I
think you lose a lot of spine. I think you lose a lot of know-how and strength and character.
I think with the young age of that squad, we can't afford to leave Austin out. I think his experience and his nous are more important than sort of his lack of pace.
Yeah, to be fair, I don't think Charlie's that slow, to be fair. I think he has actually surprised me with some of the bursting moves. I think the Gillingham game at home, when we got down to 10 men, he was running his absolute bollocks off, and he was cutting about that pitch. So, yeah, maybe I'm just overthinking it in my head, but I think we are going to have to be playing on the counter-attack and on the back foot, and we're going to be having to really, really take our chances where we can, because we won't get many.
Yeah. All right. Well, you mentioned the rumours about Mariappa, and I don't want to get sort of too sort of far away, Joe, if you've still got this to talk about with Orient, but obviously Town have been linked with free agent Adrian Mariappa, according to the Real EFL. They go on to report that the 36-year-old, who has been capped 65 times by Jamaica, has played masses of Championship and Premier League football over his lengthy career. Mariappa is a right-sided centre-back or right full-back, so he's got some flexibility and options. Not that we're exactly poor in right-back positions with Hutton and Lavinia, but certainly are in desperate need of not just experience in the squad, but obviously after the injury at Kieran Brennan, a little bit of steel and a few holes plugged at the back. So as we're speaking, no deal has been done for Adrian Mariappa, but sources close to the club are telling us that a deal is soon to come to pass. So we will keep our eye out. But obviously the week's cracking on. This needs to be done tomorrow, doesn't it, Joe, to stand any chance of Mariappa getting a sniff at the counter at Brisbane Road on Saturday?
Yeah, he's in my starting 11.
Yeah, so you put him straight in.
Well, I think the only other option is Minturn, and from quotes earlier in the week, Morris sort of was hinting that he doesn't think Minturn's certainly ready to start at the moment. So I don't think he's happy playing Minturn against the best team in the league. So I think if he comes in,
I think as well, the way we look at it as well, from what we understand, obviously Mariappa's been training at the club for, I think, over a week, maybe 2 weeks. So it's just a case of getting him signed up before 12 o'clock on Friday for him to be registered. He'll be known to the players around him. He'll have those relationships. He'll know what he's doing in a formation. I think we've got more time than we think for him to start and to play. But as Chris says, I think Jody Morris has kind of come out and said that, yeah, Minnow, he's got pedigree, he's got potential. I don't think he thinks he's completely ready to start in a League Two fixture, especially against Leyton Orient. If you're putting a youngster out to make his full first team debut in terms of the start against one of the best teams this division's ever seen, you're probably hanging about dry a little bit.
Yeah, you kind of want an experienced centre half in alongside him that's going to be able to coach him, talk him through the game, just get his confidence up, because obviously the raw ability would be there. He wouldn't be given a contract. But a little bit more on Mariappa. So he's been without a club since he left Burton Albion in January. He's got 12 appearances for Burton Albion under his belt, but his deal wasn't extended in January and he's released from the club. He's been out of the game since. So, as you say, rumoured to have been training at the club, rumoured to have been at the club for a little while. So fingers crossed, we can get a deal done and get Mariappa in the starting lineup. Is there anything else of note, Joe? Just with an eye on the time, we're now sort of encroaching on Thursday. Is there anything else Leyton Orient wise that we need to cover off?
No. I just like I say, I think it's a tough game. We know it's a tough game, but Swindon Town historically and even this season, we tend to turn up for these games in the league. We tend to do well against teams that we shouldn't be beating. So who knows? We'll come out and win. We'll win 4-0 probably after all this. Well,
look, the crazy thing, I think I've said this so many times this year. Like I personally think if you look at our team on paper, appreciate we've got injury and suspension problems at the moment. But if you look at our team on paper, particularly the firepower of Rashawn Hepburn Murphy, Charlie Austin, Jake Wakelin is as good as anything you'll find in that division. And so it proved on Saturday with the ease of which we dispatched Harrogate, who, let's not forget, dispatched us on the opening game of the season with similar levels of ease. So I think when it clicks, I think George McEachran and Jake Kane, both very capable technicians in the middle. Johnny Williams was at a World Cup a couple of months ago. Our front three that I've just mentioned, our goalkeeper's outstanding. Romeo Hutton on the right-hand side will quite easily play in the upper echelons of League One, if not pushing the Championship. And over on the left-hand side, we've got Joe Tomlinson, hopefully in a position to come in and start. We've got Ellis Iandolo to slot in there somewhere, and Ellis has proven, or not proven, but Ellis has played in the centre-back role previously, so he gives you another option potentially at the back. And of course, you've got Tom Clayton, whose breakout season is going supremely well. Slot Adrian Mariappa in there. And I'll tell you what, I genuinely think roared on by over 1,000 Swindon Town fans, well over 1,000 Swindon Town fans at Brisbane Road. Always take good support there. I think we have got enough in our armoury to give the home team a bloody good run for their money. So let's hope that's not famous last words. But thank you for that, Joe, and your insights appreciated. Listen, I mean, we could keep going on all night. As I said, we've received more and more and more of your moments as I've been talking now. As I'm glancing over it's brilliant. I really do appreciate it. Josh, here's looking at you. Steve, thank you very much. Delia, Jason, thank you. Continuing to tweet well into the night. But listen, as always, as I will say, the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge, we're an independent Swindon Town fan Twitter space, and our views do not represent those of Swindon Town or Sir Tom Broadbent himself. It's been our absolute pleasure to be looking after you tonight. Our thanks to CEO Rob Angus and CFO Greg Norman, what feels like a lifetime ago now on the show. Steve Hooper, of course, Kitman, one half of our Kitman extraordinaire, coming on. And be sure to download the latest edition of Life of a Kitman podcast, which is out on Friday. Dear listener, it's been our absolute treat. Thank you so much and goodbye. Come on, you Reds.